All right, thanks everybody for coming. We're going to call this meeting to order tonight for our planning and zoning meeting. At this time, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by invocation by Mr. Neese. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father in heaven, thank you for this wonderful county and for allowing us to gather tonight. We pray you give us wisdom on how to make the best decisions for our county and our citizens. We pray you'd bless everybody for coming in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, could we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Neese,
Here, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowndes,
Here, ma'am.
Commissioner Gutler,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chair Slay,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Benner.
Yes, ma'am.
We have quorum.
All right, thank you. Do we have any announcements? Seeing none, any disclosures? There are some items on tonight's agenda that are quasi-judicial. Does any members have any disclosures at this time?
Nope.
Seeing none, do we have approval of the minutes from the May 15th meeting?
So approved.
Second.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Lowndes, second by Mr. Lees. All in favor say aye. Motion carries. All right, this is a public hearing. If we have any members of the public that wish to address the board on any non-agenda items, so something that's not going to be talked about tonight, you just general comment, now would be your time to come on up to the mic. Seeing none, we will close public comment. We have several items on tonight's agenda that are going to request a continuance. If there are any members of the public here tonight that want to speak on any agenda items, if you haven't already, fill out a comment card and turn that into the secretary over here. When we open that agenda item up for public comment, you guys will open it up. You'll come up to the mic, state your name and address into the mic for the record. Please make sure all public comments are directed at the board. Try not to talk to anybody in the back. Everything is recorded and televised, so that way the video team can get everything correct. But other than that, let's start with agenda item 9A.
Good evening, Chair Benner, members of the Commission, Corey Benton, Planning Manager. Agenda items 9A and 9B, the Fort Pierce Commerce Center, the joint future land use map amendment and rezoning to the planned non-residential development district that was slated before this body back in June. We have received an additional request by the applicant's team for this body to continue those two public hearings until the August 21st, 2025 meeting. Staff is recommending that you proceed accordingly to continue the matters to the August 21st, 2025 meeting or soon thereafter.
All right.
6 p.m.
Thank you, staff. So this is a public hearing. We still have to open this agenda item 9A up for public comment. Is there anybody from the public that wants to address the board on agenda item 9A? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment at this time and come back to the board for discussion and or a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lowndes.
I move to continue to August 21st.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Ms. Secretary, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Neese,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowndes,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gutler,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chair Slay,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Benner.
Yes, ma'am. All right, that will be continued. And then for agenda item 9B, same thing. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody from the public that would like to address the board on item 9B, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close public comment, come back to the board for discussion and a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lowndes.
move to continue to the August 21st meeting.
Motion by Mr. Lowndes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Slay. Can we call the roll?
Commissioner Neese,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowndes,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gutler,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chair Slay,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Benner.
Yes, ma'am. All right, that brings us to agenda 9C.
Chair Benner, members of the Commission, agenda item 9C labeled Brock's Pizzeria The petition seeks a land development code text amendment to allow for full alcohol sales to be eligible as a conditional use within the commercial neighborhood zoning district, which would apply countywide for that particular zoning district. The applicant has requested continuance to the August 21st, 2025 meeting. I did want to make note that this evening's public hearings for both Brock's Pizzeria's Land Development Code text amendment and the subsequent item 9D for the associated conditional use for a specific site on South Hutchinson Island. The public hearings were adequately noticed, so we have that for the record, but the applicant is requesting a continuance for both of those items. They have a scheduled neighborhood meeting for tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. at their establishment on South Ocean Drive, South A1A on Hutchinson Island, to be able to provide information regarding their current business operations and their proposed changes via the conditional use and what will be a waiver of distance from an adjacent park in Waveland Beach. But they're asking for continuance to the August meeting to allow time to engage stakeholders, provide symmetric information, and be back before you in August. Staff is recommending that this body grant those two continuances for agenda items 9C and 9D.
All right, perfect. So this is a public hearing. If we have any member of the public that wishes to address the board on 9C, please come on up. Seeing none, we will close public comment, come back to the board for a motion or discussion.
Motion to continue. Second.
Mr. Slay with the motion to continue till August. We have a second by Mr. Gutler. Can we call the roll?
Commissioner Neese,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowndes,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gutler,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chair Slay,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Benner.
Yes, ma'am. Motion to continue passes. And then for item 9D, it is a public hearing. Do we have any member of the public that would like to address the board on agenda item 9D? Seeing none, we will close public comment, come back to the board for a motion.
Motion to continue.
Motion to continue by Mr. Slay, second by Mr. Gutler. Can we call the roll?
Commissioner Neese,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowndes,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gutler,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chair Slay,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Benner.
Yes, ma'am. All right. I believe that's all the continuance ones. So now we are on to 9E, Treasure Coast Learning Center.
Chair Benner, members of the commission, will be inviting up Tahir Curry, project planner for the conditional use for Treasure Coast Learning Center on Midway Road.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tahir Curry, planner with the St. Lucie County Planning Department. Agenda item 9E is a request for conditional use to establish a child daycare establishment known as Treasure Coast Learning Center for up to 45 students ranging from ages 6 weeks to 5 years old within the commercial neighborhood zoning district. In accordance with the public notice section of the St. Lucie County Land Development Code, advertisement was published in the St. Lucie County News Tribune on July 3rd, 2025. Mail notices sent out to property owners within 500 feet and a sign placed on the property. This is a area of the site, the location of it. It is on the corner of Midway Road and Elm Avenue. It is a .36 acre site that is outlined in blue. It is currently a 4,400 square foot retail building. The site is situated, as I mentioned, within the White City area. To the site is a establishment of different retail establishments, such as a jewelry store on Elm Avenue to the east. Although its residence is present to the south, it is situated well off the shared property line, closer to Elm Avenue. and this is just a more blown up area of the site. As mentioned, the site is zoned commercial neighborhood. According to the section of a commercial neighborhood zoning district, child daycare services is listed as a conditional use, and that is what they are presenting on for the conditional use for the child daycare service. As mentioned, the site is proposed to up to 45 students. Right now, before you is an existing, how the site currently looks. I just wanted to make sure I showed you that they are making a lot of improvements to the area. Here's the revised plan that show what the improvements that they're making. The revised plan improvements on-site traffic circulation and pedestrian movement by providing a reconfiguration of the parking layout supporting walkability. A new sidewalk connection to Midway Road has been introduced to promote safe pedestrian access from the public right-of-way. Additional parking spaces near the northern entrance of the site has been removed and replaced with landscape islands to reduce vehicle congestion and enhance the site frontage. A key enhancement is to to add a 8-foot buffer between the entry, sidewalk, and a parking area. The buffer allows for safer and more pedestrian movement during peak hours while child guardians are on site, minimizing potential conflicts between the vehicles and foot traffic. A key feature of the proposed development includes a outdoor play area to the south to be installed with artificial turf enclosed by a fence. Pedestrian safe gates also that will make sure that childs are safe during playtime. The area will replace a portion of the existing asphalt pavement as shown on the existing plan on the left of your screen. And this is based on the capacity of the amount of kids that will be proposed on the site as far as what they need to conform with as far as like the child standards for outdoor play area. Just an overview of the site, just kind of breaking down the daycare operations. The proposed operations are from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Parent drop-off and pickup times are between 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and afternoons are 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Drop-off and pickup will occupy within like a standard parking spaces. So they won't be as like a traditional drop-off loop system. They'll just park in a standard parking space and will be guided by a guardian or an employee of the site. As mentioned, there'll be 45 students ranging from 6 weeks old to 5 years old. There'll be a total of 9 employees, but there'll be 3 occupying typically at a given time. There are 13 parking spaces, including 1 handicap space, and also 3 will be reserved for staff. Lunch and food services will be brought individually, so no food preparation will be on site. The interior of the site has to be renovated to conform to the Florida Building Code rules and regulations for a daycare. As mentioned, it was currently a retail establishment, and it will be going to a daycare, so they have to make sure they conform to the Florida Building Code for that. So there will be interior renovations compliant. Also, as on the previous slide, a lot of improvements they'll be making to conform to St. Louis County Land Development Code requirements. This petition conforms to the standards of review as set forth in the St. Louis County Land Development Code section 110703 and is consistent with the St. Louis County Comprehensive Plans, Goals, Objectives, and Policies. Staff recommends that this petition be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners with a recommendation of approval, subject to the following conditions. As mentioned, they have to comply with the Florida Building Code for a change of use, making sure that before a zoning compliance is issued, that the parking improvements as shown on the improvement plan has to be modified to conform to that plan, the landscaping as well. A tree survey consistent with the St. Louis County Land Development Code. a tree mitigation plan, just making sure that the landscaping conforms to the land development code as well. If there's any removal, vegetation removal permit is required, and if there is any invasive plants that is on site, it has to be eradicated from the site. That concludes staff presentation. If you have any questions for us or the applicant, the owner is here as well to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Curry. Come back to the board. Do we have any questions for staff real quick?
I do.
Mr. Lance?
Mr. Curry, can you or Mr. Benton pull up a overhead of this piece of property with Midway Road that shows Midway? There you go. Do we have a concern for right turn in and right turn out on Midway with traffic flow?
Well, based on the improvements to, recently to Midway Road, I don't think there will be any major concerns. And so as far as the improvement plan, we do show as well before you that they have made a lot of improvements to the entrance of the driveway area, but I don't think there's much of a concern as far as the right out to the site itself.
Okay, thank you.
And Chair Benner, if I may, Commissioner Lowndes, add the intersection of Elm and Midway Road, when the county partnered to widen that roadway, as you can see from this aerial, there's a full access capacity, so that vehicle that is pulling out there is in the process of turning onto Midway Road, and so they would have the latitude via use of their southeastern driveway to come north on Elm to Midway Road, have the ability to head east with a right turn or head westbound with a left turn on to Midway Road. Given the lower volumes of traffic at 45 students, the times of trips would be isolated to the morning and pickup hours, but usually, given that they're opening up at 6:30 in the morning, different parents have different jobs or activities during the day, so we're expecting the drop-offs to be dispersed.
Be scattered in the
Yeah,
time
so
lapse.
We're
Okay.
not anticipating significant issues or any conflicts, given the community to the south is lower density, and Midway Road has so many different connections via Citrus and Elm and Melville to where the traffic accessing Midway is relatively well dispersed.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
I got a question.
Mr. Kettler?
Is there anywhere on that site plan that has drainage or any improvements we're doing for drainage on this site, or are we just leaving it the way it is? I didn't see anything on the site plan that showed like a retention or...
Commissioner Gettler and Tahir can highlight it as well, but the site is pre-existing, developed several decades ago. Their proposed improvement plan actually reduces the amount of impervious on site. You can see on the far north side, they would pull out some of the concrete surface, provide for landscape islands, including trees, and on the south side, they would be creating additional islands and planting shrubs. So they're not proposing any swales or detention areas. However, they are looking to extract and remove some impervious area, which you could argue is a slight net positive.
Sure. What do we know what the drainage is on site? Is this all piped or is this all sheet flow off site?
I believe from my observations, it sheet flows off site. I believe it's slightly higher than Elm. The apron of Elm to Midway Road was improved as part of that expansion project, but Elm itself hasn't been raised or resurfaced significantly in the past. But certainly, something that we can have our Public Works team look into. They're part of our Development Review Committee evaluating this, and I think given the site's pre-existing dynamics and the removal of impervious area, we saw that as a net benefit.
Sure. Okay.
Do we know what was on there before?
What was at the site now or before?
I believe we've had a series of retail and consumer services. I think at one point there was like a vehicle or motorcycle repair. We even had a staff member who was part of our DRC review, had previously worked in the building, and I'm not certain if that was related to title research and things like that. So it's been more of a neighborhood commercial inline retail over the last several decades. From that aerial, it looks like it might have been a contractor or somebody with some F-150s or similar sized trucks. So all in all, this may be comparable or even less intensity of what we've had in there before. Most likely more constrained hours of operation than we've seen in the site.
Thank you.
All right. If there's nothing else for staff, this is a public hearing. We will open it up to the public. If any member of the public here would like to address the board on this agenda item, come on down. Seeing none, we'll close public comment, come back to the board for discussion and or a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lowndes,
I move to approve.
we have a second.
Second.
All right. We motion to approve by Mr. Lowndes, second by Mr. Gettler. Should we call the roll, please?
Commissioner Neese,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowndes,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gettler,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chair Slay,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Benner.
Yes, ma'am. Motion carries. So that will go to the Board of County Commissioners next.
Good luck.
Yes. Godspeed.
Take care.
All right, and then next up, we got agenda item 9F, the St. Lucie County Road Impact Fee Study Update and Demonstration of Extraordinary Circumstances.
Are we serving beer with this application?
I feel like that could have been made into an acronym. There's that many words in it.
We decided not to. Good evening, Chair Benner and Commissioners. For the record, Ben Balser, Planning and Development Services Director. I just wanted to do a couple housekeeping items. This item was properly noticed on July 6th in accordance with public notice requirements. Information for this item is presently on the county's impact fee webpage, and staff sent a reminder email to stakeholders yesterday with information on tonight's public hearing. On February 4th, 2025, the Board of County Commissioners approved a contract with Benesh to update the county's road impact fee study. And on June 10th, 2025, Megan Camp, who is present tonight, she is the county's consultant with Benesh. She presented a draft study to the Board of County Commissioners at a special informal meeting. And tonight she will be leading the presentation. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Megan Camp with Benesh. Presentation starts with a brief background review, gets into the technical study calculations, and then also discusses extraordinary circumstances and next steps. So St. Lucie County is continuing to experience growth. You rank 7th out of 67 Florida counties in terms of projected population growth rate and 13 in terms of residential permitting. And so that high growth levels, of course, puts pressure on the infrastructure. Transportation impact fees were last updated in 22, and at the time they were capped and discounted, and they only addressed impacts to county and state roads. Fees are reduced within the cities. There's a 60% discount in Port St. Lucie and about 3% in Fort Pierce, so to ensure that we are not charging for city roads. So the purpose of the study, again, to reflect most recent data, which is part of the legal requirements as well. As part of this study, also, the roadway-based impact fee is being converted to a multimodal transportation impact fee. So that provides flexibility in terms of modes. So there could be standalone sidewalk additions, bike lanes, transit amenities, and so forth, in addition to roadways. Impact fees are one-time capital charge to new development. They cover the cost of new capital facilities. They cannot be used for resurfacing maintenance. They can only be used for new capacity. And they help implement capital improvement plans. And their main purpose is to maintain the level of service. They calculate the cost of growth, and they are most needed when there are high growth levels and limited alternative funding. So impact fees were governed by case law in Florida for a long time, until about 2006 when we had the Impact Fee Act passed. And some of its key requirements are that they need to comply with dual rational nexus, be supported by a study that demonstrates fees are proportional to the impact created by new development, and that the fee payer receives the benefit, which is achieved through benefit districts, as well as the list of capacity adding projects that are incorporated in the CIP or CIE or in long-range transportation plan and so forth. And the county does have multiple benefit districts, again, to make sure that fee payer is receiving a benefit. And basically with the benefit districts, the revenues collected in each zone needs to be spent in that zone. So there wouldn't be a situation where somebody is paying the fee in one end of the county and county is building a road on the other end. Something is being built close to them. Again, in 2006, we had the Impact Fee Act passed, and then it had several changes since then. Some of its key requirements are that fees be based on most recent and localized data. Anytime there's an increase, there's a minimum of 90-day notice requirement. If there's a challenge to the fee, now the government has the burden of proof. It used to be the other way around. When impact fees increased, any developer credits, outstanding developer credits, are also indexed by the same percentage, so that they don't lose ground in terms of number of units that they are getting credit for. And also, impact fee credits are transferable from one development to another in the same benefit zone or in an adjacent zone, as long as that improvement provides benefit to that zone as well. In 2021, we had the House Bill 337 passed, and it put some limits on fee increases, as well as some phasing requirements. And basically, fees cannot be increased more than 50%. That increase has to be phased over 4 years, and they cannot be increased more than once every 4 years. There's an exception clause that says if there's a study demonstrating extraordinary circumstances, and 2 public workshops are held to discuss those circumstances, and finally the governing body, 2/3 of the governing body votes for the increase, then it can be more than 50%. It can be sooner than every 4 years. This year we just had Senate Bill 1080 passed, and it made that the use of extraordinary circumstances clause a little bit more difficult. Effective January, it disallows the use of it unless the jurisdiction increased their fees within the past 5 years. And also now, as of again January, it will require unanimous approval of the governing body instead of 2/3. And finally, in 2024, we had House Bill 479 passed that required interlocal agreements between cities and counties if they are both collecting for transportation impacts in the city. And really the main goal is to make sure that there's no double charging. It also put requirements in terms of studies having to be completed and adopted in 12 months and needing to use data available within the past 4 years. Concurrency is a parallel concept. Impact fees deal with impact on a countywide basis. Concurrency addresses spot location impacts. And it's a method used for local governments to ensure that there's enough adequate public facilities are available for transportation demands. And the comprehensive plan sets the adopted level of service standards. And then local governments can use basically technical studies to evaluate the level of service and the impact of each development to make sure that there's no adverse impacts. Historically, concurrency allowed a local government to deny development applications when there was no road capacity, but over time, some of the legislative changes now require that governments allow development if the development addresses its proportionate share. So as long as they address it, they are allowed to proceed. And again, it's calculated following a formula, and it's really, the formula makes sure that there's no existing deficiencies included, or the new development is not charged for any existing deficiencies. So consumption, the technical study is using a consumption-based methodology, which is very common in Florida. It charges new growth for the value of the transportation infrastructure that is consuming. And again, fees are calculated in a manner that they do not charge for existing deficiencies. So the basic formula looks at cost to add capacity. From that, we subtract any future revenues from new development that will also be used for capacity projects. And then that net cost gets multiplied by demand, which is measured in terms of travel. So just to kind of show you how the formula works, we start with estimating the cost of 1 lane mile. That's 7.7 million. So if you have a 1 mile of road with 2 lanes, that's about 15 million. That carries a 12,700 person capacity. So then the cost per person miles of capacity is about $600. So that just means every time we add a person to the transportation system, for them to travel a mile costs about $600. Average home generates 23 person miles daily. Those two multiply gives us the total cost of almost $14,000. We subtract any credits, basically other revenue sources from new development, and then the net fee ends up being about $12,300. This is a single family 2,000 square foot example. The demand side of the transportation impact fees have 3 main variables: the number of trips that each land use makes every day, how long those trips are, the trip length, and how many of them are new trips. So if someone is going from home to office and they stop at a gas station, we don't charge that gas station because that trip was already on the way. And the data sources include National Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Handbook, Florida studies that measure all 3 variables, and then travel demand model. Cost component, we reviewed any recent projects that are completed as well as ongoing projects and estimates for future upcoming projects that are locally being built, and then that got supplemented with projects from other counties. So then the construction cost for county roads based on all this data was estimated at about $4 million per lane mile. And this is kind of just to give you a sense of how the transportation costs have been trending over time. You know, we had the 05, 06, 07 boom, the cost increased. Then we had the Great Recession when the costs were decreasing. Since then, the cost started to increase again, and then the level of increase heightened after the pandemic. And the county had the 2017 update after the recession, you know, looking back those 14, 15. And then the 22 update was limited by that 50% cap of the 2017 study. Some of the indices indicate the same type of trend. You know, you kind of see that costs were increasing, but the level of increase became more significant after the pandemic. So with design, right-of-way, construction, engineering, inspection, the total cost for a county road was estimated at $6.2 million per lane mile. We went through a similar process for state roads. The construction cost was estimated at $6.5 million per lane mile, and total costs at about $10.2 million per lane mile. And then the county roads and state roads were blended based on the type of projects that are included in the long-range transportation plan, showing 63% will be county roads, 37% will be state roads. So that gave us the blended cost of $7.7 million per lane mile. And then we look at how much capacity that those roads are adding, again, looking at the long-range transportation plan, and then taking the cost per lane mile and dividing by the capacity gives us the cost per person miles of capacity that gets used in the equation. On the credit side, we are looking at any revenue sources that are being contributed toward capacity projects. So there's sales tax, there's state funding, And overall, it's about 38 million is coming, and most of it is coming from the state. The Ridley County does not have much revenues other than impact fees going for capacity projects. One of the questions we get sometimes is that transportation has a dedicated revenue source in terms of fuel taxes, but it is a very inefficient revenue source. They are on a per gallon basis. State pennies are indexed. Local pennies are not allowed to be indexed, while other taxes, sales tax, ad valorem, they are being indexed automatically because they are on a per dollar basis. So when we look at a fuel tax in terms of the local pennies, between fuel efficiency and inability to index, a penny mid-90s is worth less than half of its value now. So you have a revenue source that's losing ground and the costs are increasing, so that gap of funding is growing over time. As part of this study, we were asked to develop 2 fee districts, one inside the urban service boundary, and other is outside. And basically, that's looking at the level of service in each area and adjusting the fee accordingly. Transportation level of service, that's in the comp plan, is an exception standard. It says no road will be worse than D. We use that, the impact fee calculations use that as an average. So basically, on average, the county roads will be at D, meaning half the roads will be worse, half the roads will be better. So if the only revenue source is impact fees, they slow down the degradation of the level of service, but they don't really stop it. They don't maintain it. When we look at the actual level of service, again, on an average basis, they tend to be better. So we review, and really, when we say level of service D and so on, that relates to speed of travel or the congestion levels. How fast you can move versus how congested the area is. So the 2 districts is, again, one in the inside service area boundary and the other one's outside. So when we look at the urban, inside the USB, the achieved level of service is 0.6. So the level of service standard is 1, it's volume to capacity ratio, 1:1, whereas there is a lot more capacity compared to that on a area-wide basis within the USB, it's 0.6. When we go to outside the USB, it's even better, it's about 0.3. So basically, the county could charge for some of that, the fact that outside the USB, there's a higher, less congestion, better travel speeds, and a higher level of service. So the calculations set the level of service 1 for the urban area, and then for the rural, we use a 0.8. We don't use the fully 0.3 that they achieve, but we use 0.8. So basically, charge them for part of the level of service that they are enjoying. So with that, within USB, the cost per PMC is about $605. Outside is $760. So that creates that fee differential. This slide shows some example fees for comparison. Again, for single family, less than 2,400 square feet. In the urban area, it would be about $12,000. In the rural area, it would be about $16,000. That's the full calculated rate. And then you see some examples of non-residential as well. In addition, the fees are adjusted in the cities. In Port St. Lucie, they are reduced by about 55–60%. In Fort Pierce, about 3% to make sure that we are not collecting for city travel. So overall, this chart provides a comparison. So the urban, outside the cities, urban rate would be full calculated rate is about $12,300. In the rural area, $15,800. Within Port St. Lucie is about $4,600, and in Fort Pierce is almost $12,000. And this slide and a couple other slides show comparisons to other jurisdictions. So here we try to show you the study date so you have a sense how old the data is, as well as the adoption percentages, so that you have, again, that's a policy decision. So this group is ranging anywhere from about 4,000 to 21,000. This is for single-family home. And this group is about 3,000 to about 10,000 or 11,000. In terms of revenue projections, we basically reviewed the recent permitting and created a range. Looking at 2015, so past 10 years, the county averaged 4,000 permits, and since the pandemic, it was more like 6,000 per year. So with those, the annual collections would double or triple depending on the permitting levels. So current collections around 10 million, that could go to about 19 million or 28 million per year. Benefit districts you've seen before, they were already the established benefit districts, and we have no recommendations to change them. In terms of extraordinary circumstances, again, St. Lucie County is one of the larger counties in terms of population and a high-growth county. There has been significant cost increases since the 2017 study, so that's a challenge. When we look at, so here we are showing in the red box, what you see is the current adopted rate under 22, and then the calculated rate, so that's a significant increase. When we look at what was calculated in 22, which is in the yellow box, the increase would have been much more moderate. If the county were to adopt the full rate in 22, current increase would have been about 40 to 50%. So part of the reason for this large increase is the fact that the fees are sort of suppressed compared to what the costs were. And then if we were to cap it now, it would probably be all the way up to 70% of below the full cost. In addition, county has identified at least $285 million worth of projects that are unfunded or partially funded. And the long-range transportation plan shows that even after the projects that are in the cost feasible plan are built, there will be 20% of the roads that will be over capacity. So today we are here to get your input, answer any questions. On August 9th, and we had the first workshop on the extraordinary circumstances this afternoon. Second one will be on August 19, and also the first hearing, and then September 2nd would be the adoption hearing. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the board?
You're kidding.
I got one.
Mr.
Can we
Slay.
get like the short and sweet of that, of like what we're trying to accomplish here? Like from you guys, like, you know, where you're at, what we're facing, and what you're trying to accomplish? Versus just hearing a bunch of numbers.
Good evening, Chair Benner, members of the Commission, Vice Chair Slay. In sum, we're experiencing a lot of growth and development in St. Lucie County. That influx of growth is causing significant demands on public facilities, particularly roads. The county's primary source to make roadway improvements, capacity improvements, widen roadways, add turn lanes, make sure that what folks experience is not a traffic jam, is primarily through impact fees. And over the last decade, if you will, when we've compiled data and we've put together what the necessary impact fee rates should be to balance and try to counter and make sure that we have funds available to make necessary improvements, the rates have been adopted at a lower or suppressed a sub-market value. So the county hasn't been able to accomplish or achieve necessary roadway improvements to offset that growth and development. So that the data that was presented this evening shows that in order to bring that equilibrium back, to make sure that we have funds necessary to accommodate growth that's already approved or potentially to be approved in the future, that the impact fee rates, we have extraordinary circumstances, and we're asking the Board of County Commissioners to elevate those rates to align with the market figures. You know, the cost of building new roads, expanding intersections, adding turn lanes is at an all-time high. And in order for local government to be able to fund that and keep up, the rates have to align. And so, you know, for new homeowners, for a business looking to build a new facility, these rates would experience additional costs. But arguably, that's unfortunately the cost of doing business today, because in order to accommodate and support that growth, it's very costly for us as a community to achieve that on the ground. To build on that, if we continuously have those shortfalls or gaps, the alternatives are continuously experiencing low capacity of roadways, traffic jams, or the local government needing to pursue other sources of funding, whether that's increasing taxes, continuously pursuing sales tax expansions, or other means. So in order for the county to achieve that theme or that desire of growth and development paying for itself, we're at the helm today saying that we need to be able to increase our impact fee rates to align with the market.
So do you believe that the increase is going to be sufficient for the growth that's coming?
The data suggests that it will at least allow future development on the horizon to start to pay for itself. Unfortunately, as was discussed, it won't cover any gaps or deficiencies from past years. There's also a variable related to impact fee credits, where there are some developments where they do come in and build new roads, expand roads, and maybe they leave more capacity than what their project is consuming. And so the local government's load, I always use the analogy of a gift card. We're going to give you a gift card for that surplus, and we can take off that gift card each time you build a home or build a business. And if you complete your entire development and you still have money on that gift card, you can sell it to another developer, and they can start to deduct from that gift card. So we have some legacy deficiencies. We have some legacy impact fee credits that won't be captured with this rate increase. But moving forward, this data suggests if we adopt at the full estimated rates, we're good for the foreseeable future to be able to collect the necessary revenue to offset that growth. As we've talked about, we update the rates and we complete studies. So for instance, if rates need to increase in the future, data would support that, and we would have that conversation then. Or if we find out a more efficient way to build roads, or cost of aggregates and materials come down, we would recalibrate and potentially decrease rates. So there's a lot of variables. Some of the data shows, you know, when there was an economic recession, it was easier to build a road, more cost effective. So
Sure.
we model it, we map data, and we don't want to charge more than it's costing to offset that development, and statute doesn't allow us to charge more than the impacts, but this is what the data is suggesting. Now, the Board of County Commissioners has difficult decisions all across the board. It's never easy to increase rates, but as discussed, sometimes it's a question of, do you increase impact fees on new development, folks who haven't come to our community yet or haven't built that home, or do you push that burden onto existing taxpayers? They have the tools of adopting at the full rates recommended, which is, you know, what staff's position is we have to get on the ball. They have the ability to adopt at a partially or discounted lower rate, which we've identified tonight. In the past, that's been the election of multiple boards. And there's also the ability to phase it in. So instead of having a rate here at $6,000 per single-family home for roads, leaping to $12,000, doubling it, the board has the ability to let the public and the development world know that we need to achieve that market equilibrium, but we're going to phase it in. Same way, you know, if you go to your customers and say, hey, things cost more, cups, pork, beef, French fries, employees, wages, taxes, you may not wish to raise it in a menu tomorrow one full leap, but may phase it in over quarters or over years and get to a point where, hey, now this is the market equilibrium. This is what we can provide this service and this food for, and we're taking a look at how we can meet the needs of our community as we grow, and this impact fees are an essential tool to achieve that.
I feel like sometimes like we're building faster than infrastructure could even keep up with to begin with. So and then that's where I say is like is there a thought process to not stop growth but throttle growth? Because I mean like all over the state of Florida is just booming growing, but you can't build the infrastructure fast enough to keep up with it, in my opinion, from what I see at least. So that's where I'm like, is there like what is like the overall that we're trying to accomplish, which you just explained well, and then is there the ability to phase it in, throttle it in versus just here you go and that's what it is. And sometimes are you guys in a position where it's time to rip the Band-Aid off? I mean, you know.
I think Vice Chair Slay, we're at the table saying we're ready to rip the Band-Aid off, whether that's a slow rip or a quick rip. There's the ability to phase it in. What we've experienced in Florida is significant. Also, St. Lucie County, and there's a variety of reasons for that decision. Demand for somebody to move here, whether it's lower cost of property, the quality of life that we experience, really nice people that we interact with, or anything else under the sun. But again, building on that analogy of if a new restaurant opens up and their rates are just well below market, which they surveyed the market and they're setting it 20% below, they might have customers out in the parking lot on a daily basis. But is it sustainable? And so what we're looking at is making sure that we have market balance and what new development is paying in the way of roadway impact fees, so we can try to keep up with those demands and make sure that we're not burdening existing taxpayers and residents, and making sure we plan for our future.
So what would be your go-to alternative if the board says, hey, we don't want to do any of that? What would be y'all's game plan then? Like where would you go for the funding?
So if the board first and foremost said we don't want to raise rates, period, we of course would be pleading and countering, well, we're happy to phase them in. Alternative sources, our Public Works Director can talk about the strategies that we currently implement and the constraints that we have. We're constantly working with the Transportation Planning Organization. We have the sales tax initiative. We're talking about a capital improvement program where the board is trying to allocate some funding for resurfacing and maintenance, but capacity has been challenging. Sometimes it's a negotiation with developers, but statutes are pretty tight and who they favor when it comes to new development projects. And so there can be some grant funding for certain roadways, federal projects like US Highway 1. The state could be a participant in interchanges in some of their main roadways in Okeechobee and Emerson and Indrio and St. Lucie Boulevard if they're willing to take it over. But for the majority of the roadways in the county, it becomes a much more difficult decision.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Lowndes.
I sat on this board when the county first started impact fees, and we've always run the challenge of making impact fees based on our gut and logical thinking versus the fear of running developers off with too high a price. And with that thought, we're still behind the 8 ball trying to catch up on any development. Does impact fees affect a person that goes into the urban service area, buys a lot, and builds a house different than a developer that comes in and says, I'm going to develop 40 acres of development? Is there a difference in the two impact fees?
Chair Benner, Commissioner Lowndes, and members of the Commission, through our informal discussions with the Board of County Commissioners, at least one data set that the board asked to be able to look at to compare and consider just that, a differential rate between new development outside and also inside the urban service boundary. And so the data set that's been compiled and presented does present that as an option where the board could differentiate it. Typically, those findings would point to a higher rate outside of the urban service boundary because the travel distance, the length of those trips to get to work, to get to school, to grocery stores, or other destinations is longer. Therefore, it's arguably providing or causing greater impact on the roadway or needs. So those rates would be marginally higher outside of the urban service boundary if there is a differential. To your point of finding lots inside the urban service boundary and developing, one thing I'll note for the record that we have plenty of pre-existing development in the county. If somebody is demolishing an older home, building something new, modifying a commercial building, they've found an old piece on US Highway 1 where Jenkins Plaques used to be near the police station. If there was development previously there since the time the county adopted impact fees, they can pursue a credit. And so it's not where it's renewed. Impact fees are a one-time fee. So if it's been a greenfield, grass for perpetuity, that's when the impact fee would be assessed, not somebody who's redeveloping a site, unless they're increasing the density, quantity of dwelling units, or increasing the demand by taking a retail store. And this is probably a good example. At Orange Avenue and 25th Street, we had a Walgreens at the corner. And if you demolish that and rebuild a 7-Eleven, the 7-Eleven's generating a lot more traffic in and out than the Walgreens, you would see them pay the difference. But they'd receive a credit based upon what the impact fee would have been applied to a 15,000 square foot Walgreens store toward a 24 pump gasoline fueling station.
7-Eleven would have to make up the difference?
That is correct. Additionally, Commissioners, what I'll point to is we have adopted our code of ordinances, opportunities for targeted industries when Maverick, Pursuit, Moats, or some other manufacturing facilities, logistics, high employment, high capital investment, high ad valorem tax contributors. The board has opportunities to be able to provide impact fee abatement as an economic development tool and incentive, so that there are options. If we're up here saying, well, folks are staring down those rates, maybe they don't come do business in St. Lucie County, maybe they don't provide those necessary jobs in the core functions, but we do have some tools in the toolkit as well.
In one of your presentations, you talked about a multiple mogul design or something.
Multimodal transportation impact fee. So most impact fees traditionally were roadway based. So the revenues could only be used for roadway related capacity additions. If you are adding a lane, if you are building a new road or intersection improvement. Multimodal transportation impact fees also allows standalone sidewalk addition or a bike lane addition or a transit amenities, shelter and so forth, to be funded with impact fees.
So we're going to be getting more for our buck. Instead of just a road, we're going to get sidewalks, bike lanes, and
correct.
Bus stops.
Bus stops and such have you.
Yes.
Okay. Kind of like watching the guy that stole your Mercedes drive over a cliff, isn't it? You glad to see him go, but he wished he'd used somebody else's car. The screen that you have up right now is based on single-family home within the urban service area. The 577-1 is in the service area.
Currently, yes.
Pardon?
That's the current fee. That's what the county is charging right now. Yes.
And the 8708 is what we would go to at what we're suggesting the increase would be?
That was what the 22 study 3 years ago was calculating the cost at. So that was the full rate 3 years ago in that study, but it wasn't adopted at full. Like it was 8,700 is the full cost, and the adopted rate is 5,800 or so. So it was adopted at discount.
Chair Benner, Mr. Lowndes, if I may, so yes, the yellow box, whenever we made this same presentation in 2022, The recommendation from staff was the full rate, and the full rate was $8,700. The board in 2022, whenever they did adopt the road impact fee update, they adopted it at a reduced rate and then phased that rate in. So our current rate is well below what the 2022 recommended adoption rate was from
Mr.
staff.
Belcher, what is our rate right now?
Our rate right now for a single-family home that is 2,000 square feet inside the urban service boundary is $5,771.
$5,771.
Yes.
What about outside of it?
We don't have a differential between inside and outside.
Inside or
currently.
outside, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at the moment.
And we're asking that it goes to 8708?
We're asking the full rate would be $12,273.
So just for a point of clarification, since it was suggested at 8,700, they only went to 5,700. There's a $3,000 shortfall that, if not collected from new development coming in to build more roads, would have to be collected through sales tax incentives or somewhere else. And if it was a sales tax incentive, we're basically subsidizing the shortfall on the current residents' sales tax to come up with that money, because at the end of the day, in 2022, it was $8,700 to build roads for new developments for single-family homes, and they decided to not collect it and keep it lower, right?
And we're still backing up.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Which is why you see such a big jump from 5,700 to 12, because they didn't do it back then. So now you got to take an even bigger jump now, right?
And Chair Benner, to clarify, it's arguably over the last 3 years, we've been missing out on approximately $3,000 per dwelling unit in revenue for that look back. Moving forward, if we don't modify the rates, yes, it's closer to $7,000.
Yeah, Chair Benner, Commission, Joseph Bader, Senior Management Analyst for the record. I was the former Impact Fee Program Manager. That's why I'm here. If you go to page 43. So the slide you're looking at, the $3,000 shortfall, the other issue why we're bringing extraordinary circumstances is the influx of development. So when we did the study in 2022, the average number of permits was about 4,700 per year. If you look now, the average number of permits is 6,000 per year. So that $3,000 shortfall is growing exponentially by the number of the growth. So yes, we're losing $3,000 per unit, but now there's an additional 1,300 permits per year. So that number is even higher now. So we're really feeling the burden.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lyons?
Mr. Belcher, one of my big concerns is, I don't want to say penalizing, but to a degree we are. A resident of the county that sells a house and wants to go build another house, he's going to be hit with impact fees, correct?
Correct. At the time, you pay impact fees at the time of building permit.
But he's not adding to the traffic in the county because he's here anyway. My overwhelming concern are the developers that come in and overwhelm us with traffic and new development, which we need, but it also taxes our structure. Is there a differential between a resident buying a house on a single lot and a developer that's going to put 6 houses to the acre and he's got 100 acres? Have I made myself?
Yes, you make yourself clear. If I can chime in. So there is no difference between a developer and a potential homeowner. So if I were to build my house myself, I would pay the same impact fee for a 2,400 square foot home as a developer if they're going to build 400. It's incremental. They would be charged the same fee on all 400 units.
Yeah, in theory, whoever bought that house would be the person that would be adding the impact.
Yeah, there'll still be new
It's
impacts
just
because whoever
trickle it
sold the
back
house.
and it
That's
gets
true, I hadn't
distributed.
thought about that. Whoever bought my house is adding to the impact fee.
And,
Because
and,
it's a one-time
and the
fee.
fact that they are not going to pay additional impact fees when you're buying an existing home, it's typically reflected in the price. So you recoup that. It's a one-time payment that stays with land and is attached to the structure, not the person buying or selling. And the value of it is reflected in the sales price whenever they are selling it, because sales prices are determined by the market. A home X amount is selling for 400,000 here or there. You know, the person who's not paying the impact fee basically recouping that, and the other person maybe is paying the impact fee and not getting the full
So the
400.
person buying my house is not going to have an impact fee.
They are not going to have an impact fee, but you're going to recoup that in your sales price.
We hope.
Well, the buyer would be looking at, I mean, they're gonna buy, say, a resale at 400, or I'm gonna spend 412 to build a new house, right? So
Right.
it'll all wash out in the market?
As long as I don't go build a new house and go buy an old house, I'm okay.
Exactly.
You got a house to sell?
Yeah,
I'll
he
find
does.
you one.
So let me, can I ask this? So when I built my house in 2018, I think I paid like 18,000 total. That was with the building permit. So if somebody wants to build a house now, what's that total number for impact fees?
So Chair Benner, Vice Chair Slay, and members of the commission.
If we,
um,
and if we were to, you know,
Sure.
what's that look like?
So to provide that differential, and this is factoring in when you assess a single-family home, you assess road impact fees, park impact fees, school impact fees, law enforcement, fire EMS, libraries, and public buildings. Today, for a home approximately 2,400 square feet in size, you're right around $16,600.
For impact fee.
That is correct. If you came in tomorrow, applied for a permit in the unincorporated area, not factoring in any city limits. The proposed increase that's before you this evening, it would bring that total bill to roughly $23,200.
And that's not counting building permit.
That's not
Just
factoring
fees
in
only.
building permits.
And if you're in the city of Fort Pierce or the city of Port St. Lucie, what does that look like?
So in the city of Fort Pierce, if you're in the CRA, currently they have a moratorium, at least it's my understanding it's still active. And so you would not pay their slate of impact fees. The city of Fort Pierce adopted their impact fees around 2008. They adopted them at a 60% rate of what the technical memo and study suggested at that time. So fast forward the 17 years, their rates are certainly behind, in my opinion. The city of Port St. Lucie in recent years has transitioned to a mobility fee to offset transportation impacts, and their fee, how we have it structured is we basically take our fee, we deduct their fee from our fee, and so we're not double dipping or double layering those fees. And I understand under today's rates, because we're assessing schools, parks, libraries, that slate of county-wide public facility impact fees, that we're probably close to $19,000 to $20,000 per single-family home. And Joseph's going to firm up that number, that we're right at $20,000 currently.
And what does that look like in the city of Port St. Lucie if they adopt what they're proposing down there, which is very similar to this? I think
Well,
it jumps up pretty substantial.
So
Is that
Commissioner Gettler will note for the public and for this body that the city of Port St. Lucie is, they have a parallel study working through their mobility plan updates. They've had public workshops. They're at the very preliminary stages, again, presenting and compiling data based upon costs, development activities. They're looking at different ratios, maybe assessing on a per 1,000 square foot basis, but it would resemble a notable uptick if adopted and proceeding at their displayed rates, at least at their most recent workshop.
Yeah, I mean,
don't have
I
any-
struggle with this because I get it. Like, I understand, cost of infrastructure, and I think, we have some deferred maintenance on our roads, and we need to pay for that. Good roads cost money, and bad roads cost more. But at the same time, like, between the city and this, it's like, oh, we're just crushing people. All this gets passed on to consumers. People aren't going to absorb this in the market. The consumers will, and we already have affordability issues now. Interest rates are high. Like, this is just another tax on people, I feel like, to some degree. So, but again, I get the idea. We have to put the infrastructure in too, right? So I'd like to see more of a phased approach personally. I think it makes sense. The market can look at it and predict in the future, not predict, but, be ready for what's coming versus, ripping the Band-Aid off at one time. And, it doesn't seem like that's a great idea, but that's just my opinion.
I think when we talked about this in '22, I think my biggest, because I'm like where Ed's thinking, right? Like the people that have been here, let's say we are, our kids want to build homes and do all this stuff, and like, man, we don't want them to, we're obviously looking at, one house versus thousands of homes being built by developers and stuff like that. And so I wasn't for the road increase at all in '22. And so obviously looking at it now, we can say, well, hey, we've got a shortfall now, the market's just out of control anyway. So when you look at it, it's like, what's $7,000 more in the gist of all of this go? I was talking to somebody, I built my house for $240,000 in 18, and you would do at least double that now to build it, right? And so, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what's that? And if it's going on to the developer, I think for me, like, I would love to see somewhere like we had things in place where we take care of locals, right? Or people. I don't know what that looks like, but I would love to see more of that for the families that have been here and have chosen to stay here. And I mean, we've got, I think Fort Pierce of all places has a more local community than anywhere else in the state of Florida, where you have so many locals and families that have been here through generations. I just don't know how you do something like that, or would try to help take care of that, or what is there a credit you could give to somebody for being, hey, your family's been here for however long, because these are the ones that you're building your foundation on top of, are all these families that have been here and chosen to stay here. So that was just my point of view when we talked about this in '22. So.
Vice Chair Slay, thank you for the feedback. It might not be much of a consolation, but presently and historically, the county has not assessed individual impact fees on guest homes. So when you are in an eligible zoning district, and families from time to time do build guest homes utilizing allowable ordinances, that's one small token.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lowndes.
can one of you four fine people dwell into the transfer fees and transfer zone fees for a developer? If he's going to build a unit in zone 1, does he not, we don't utilize the impact fees in that thing, but he could transfer it to zone 2 if he's building another development there? What the hell's that deal?
Developer credits, right? Okay. So when the developers contribute beyond their immediate impact and they build some improvement, they are eligible for impact fee credit, dollar for dollar. If they spend $200,000
Let me stop there. Where do they get the credit? Why do we give them? Why do we give them credit for what?
For improving the roadway more than their impact.
On themselves, outside of their development?
Outside of their development.
Okay,
right.
go ahead.
And that's by law that they have to get credit for dollar. And now, if their own development, that site cannot use all of that credit, then they are allowed to transfer it to another site, sell it to another developer, or within the same zone, or even to the next zone if the improvement is benefiting the both zones.
Can a developer transfer from credits from one developer to the other?
Yes. Yeah, these are all recent legislative changes.
Commissioner Lowndes, to reiterate and build on that, the transfer would need to take place within that zone. So we wouldn't have credits transferred from Rangeline Road to North Hutchinson Island. Where there's some overlapping benefit, as was stated, Okeechobee Road straddles Zone A and Zone 1 and Zone 2. You might have the ability to overlap. Same way when we collect fees from a development off of Rangeline Road, the local government has the task of deploying those dollars in that zone to offset their impacts, or immediately adjacent zone, because obviously folks travel down the road a little further. So it tries to keep the nexus between the ratepayer or the credit being issued and those impacts and demands.
So if Mr. Neese over here decides he's gonna put in a development in Zone 1, and he ends up with credits because he improved the turn lanes and the whole road's going into it, he can give me those credits and I can put them in Zone 2 for my development?
Commissioner Lowndes, if the credits wouldn't be provided to turn lanes into their development, but if they were providing turn lanes on an outward roadway, an intersection that the region uses, then you could transfer, sell them within the same zone, or you could request to the local government the ability to transfer to a different abutting zone.
In
but
essence,
we'd
I would not have to
scrutiny.
pay any impact fees because Mr. Neese is gonna be kind man and give me his
Potential.
credits.
I don't know if developers do that. He would probably,
So wait a minute.
he would probably sell them to you.
Yes,
At a nominal fee.
at a slight increase.
Sure, and there would have to be reasonable justification to take those credits outside of the zone into an abutting zone. So there would be heavy scrutiny on that. One thing I'll make note of with Florida statute updates in 2019, if someone receives a credit and we load that gift card, the value of that gift card or that credit cannot diminish over time as rates increase. So that's something that is to be considered. So Mr. Neese had a development, received credits, is holding on to that gift card. With any updates in our rates, we're not diminishing the value of those credits.
As I said before, I've sat on this board since Christ walked on water, and I don't think impact fees have slowed down development to this county. I don't see anything slowing it down other than the lack of infrastructure that we have because we weren't able to get the impact fees to stay ahead of it. I think maybe the impact is single family trying to build a house with that impact fee versus developers coming in that have got bankrolls of money and they just mark it up as the cost of the house within that development. Do you, either of you, feel that we are slowing down development with the increase that we're looking for?
Chair Benner, Commissioner Lowndes, members of the commission, on the surface, I don't think that it would provide significant headwinds or slow down development, as was discussed with Commissioner Gettler. Of the developers that they're looking at numbers, they're looking at intricacies of what's the land value, what are they going to build, what's the cost of that, their own roads, impact fees, building permit fees, the cost of materials. And so it certainly would increase and inflate that, or enhance that value or that cost. But the market, again, has to digest that, and sometimes maybe incrementally phasing it in allows the market a little bit of time to digest it and build it in to land costs and rates. One thing I'll point to as part of the answer, in 2010, the road impact fee rate was approximately 4% of the mean house price of sales. Now we know in 2010, home prices were low. We'd love to go back and buy more homes at $111,000. If you fast forward to today, and we know these are some of the highest sale prices that we've observed in St. Lucie County, we're just shy of $400,000 last year in 2024. Today's road impact fee rate is just over 1.5%. And 1.62 of that mean average home price. So what we're proposing this evening, and that fee presented, it would equate to approximately 3% of the average home sale price at the moment. So it aligns a little bit closer with what was occurring in 2010. Now again, that might be toward the bottom of the market, so we can look at what's that middle tier, the running average over the last 15 years to see where the recommended rate falls as a percentage of the overall cost of a home. But I think that it wouldn't have a significant impact on deterring or adversely affecting.
Does a high impact fee push a developer to want to put more houses per acre, like on 40-foot lots, so that his impact fee per unit is lower?
Commissioner Lowndes, so the rates, they're on a per unit basis, so there's not a volume discount or, you know, a discount. If you're building 1,000 homes, you get 20% off. However, the rate structure, which corresponds with vehicle miles traveled and trip generation rates for use types, by the nature of it, a multifamily unit, which is often smaller, more compact, maybe less bedrooms, potentially less cars, or, you know, closer to destinations, because
They'll give them all bicycles.
you'd put density closer to commercial and to schools and libraries and what have you. The rates for a multifamily unit or a townhome unit are lower than single-family homes. So in theory, you might be able to make the statement that, well, this might push people to start looking at townhomes, but the market guides prices. You know, so what somebody's paying for a single-family home detached with their own property is arguably going to be higher than an attached townhome that's slightly smaller. So I think that the rates kind of align overall with the market. There's, again, a lot of variables. Maintenance to that single-family home yard versus, you know, it may not have that obligation for townhomes. So to answer your question, in some, you know, there's not a discount for high-volume developers, and I'm not sure that it would guide or change how they approach the unit type. But, you know, on one hand, you could argue that, well, if the rates are higher, maybe you want to command a higher price for that single-family home to recoup it. Maybe you start building a little bit higher-end homes, you know, crafted homes that command those larger prices. There's a little.
Unfortunately, Lucy, because every 1,000 feet, it's another $5,000 on their proposal.
And to that point, I think the city of Port St. Lucie has a prescribed minimum square footage if you're building a new home. You know, in St. Lucie County, you could present a plan to us, 1,000 square foot home or 2,000 square foot home. It's going to, under the current and proposed rate structure, those homes would pay the same road impact fee. In Port St. Lucie's proposal, that would be a differentiated rate. Again, it's to be adopted or to be considered for adoption. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts at the moment.
Do we have any idea, and I asked Department of Operation and Management from another committee that I sit on, at what point in a house, a developer's house, do we receive profit from the taxes? Where is that honey line? Is it 320,000? Is it 280,000? Is it 400,000? Do we have any idea where that point is?
Commissioner Lowndes, you and I have had this opportunity to discuss it. Unfortunately, I do not have that equilibrium figure. I know we've talked about trying to capture some data to point to that, but no, sir. I think there's so many variables with homestead exemptions and home size, and, you know, whether it's an age-restricted community or home to truly derive that figure.
Mr. Slay.
So real quick, do you guys have a projection? Okay, so let's talk about projected growth, projection of impact currently, projection of, hey, going to this number. If you phase, you know, I guess what I'm trying to, what's the shortfall, right? Like, so if we stay where we're at and we hit projected growth, what's the loss? If we bump the fee, what's the gain? You know.
So Joseph's going to put on screen what the revenue projections are, and, you know, we talked previously $285 million worth of infrastructure improvements on that list of projected needs. But what we have today, approximately $10 million per year collected, and so what the annual low end with the multimodal fee would be an uptick of about $8 million, almost $9 million annually. And over the projected 5-year horizon, we're talking over $90 million.
Right on.
This doesn't have the, sorry.
Go ahead.
This doesn't have the commercial stuff on it, or is this just strictly based on
No,
residential?
it does. It does. We start with.
We weighted it.
Right,
Okay, got
yeah,
it.
it's usually 85% or so is residential and 15 or so.
And so I guess I go back to, so we talk, zone 3 is basically built out, right? And so if we talk zone 1 and zone 2, do you guys feel like this will put you ahead of the game before all that growth builds?
I think it would align us with the game, at least for the foreseeable future, to ensure we're not behind for those zones and for any future development.
Corey. So part of the part that bugs me is the $6.2 million per lane mile. I mean, that doesn't give you very much per year regardless. Was that $12 million for a 2-lane street per mile? That doesn't get you
Didn't do
much
it
bang. I
last-
mean,
we
I don't
didn't
know
do
if
it
there's
in
enough.
2020,
That's just a lot of
22.
money. I don't think that, I mean, I don't want to see any taxes raised, but I don't know if it's enough. I mean, we need a lot of roads.
And Commissioner.
Or we stop building.
Or we stop building.
That data is
Raise it to
certainly.
double the height, double the amount and slow it down.
Well, an argument would be made too that, like, think about in zone 3, the average quarter acre lot now that builders are paying is like $1.50 plus.
I know.
So to absorb a $7,000 increase because the roads need it, and we've basically been cutting ourselves off at the knees, it's a lot easier to absorb on a $100,000 lot, or even an $80,000 lot over in Indian River Estates. We're not talking back, in the 90s when people were signing the deeds over because they didn't want to pay the special or the water and sewer assessments for the lines. So it's a completely different market. But at some point, you're either gonna charge it on new development because they're bringing in the cars, or you're gonna halfway do it, and then when there's a shortfall, we're gonna ask for more sales tax incentives, which affects seniors on Social Security and fixed income, and everybody else that spends money in the county to make up for the road congestion that we can't fund with the new builds. And at the end of the day, if it's a $7,000 increase, maybe phased in over 2 years to get us fully funded, there's another study coming up anyways in what, 2 years?
Approximately 4.
4?
So,
Right.
so what I look at, so in 2018, I think my property appraised at like 27.5. The guy across the street selling his now for 150. So what is $7,000 at this point in the mix of all of that, right?
That's what he
So that's
said.
kind of how I look at it. Like, we're just in
If
a
you still look at it
yeah.
as a percent of average of the mean sales price, it's still less
Well, and just
at-
the cost of everything.
than
now,
it
too.
was in 2010. We were at 3.98% of the median sales price and road impact fees. Now we're going to be at, if we go to the full 12 grand,
Yeah.
you're at like 3.02 or whatever. So it's still a happy medium, and it wouldn't be that big of a jump. I think the other slide said it would have been like a 40-some% increase if in 22 the full fee would have been adopted, but since it wasn't, 42% if they would have went to the 8708.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at 113, which looks absolutely insane. But every project that comes up here, it's the roads suck. We need better roads, the
Yep.
congestion. So at some point, I mean, like they said, you got to rip the Band-Aid off, and how you rip it off is how you rip it off. But I mean, at some point, you got to
So,
pay for it.
If you guys were to phase this, do you have like a plan to phase? Like, is there a thought process behind the phasing this to maximum? Like, what would that look like?
So last time around, the rates were phased in over 4 years.
Okay.
So we can either phase in over 2 years or 4 years, depending on board direction.
Okay.
Also, just to elaborate on the fee, the 12,000 may seem like a sticker shock, but as Negan mentioned, the statutes have recently updated. So the most recent statutes, 19 and this year, they can only be increased no more than 50%. That's every 4 years. And now there is an exemption, extraordinary circumstances. That is even a higher bar now as of this year, starting January 1, where that if they have not increased in 5 years, they only limit it to 50%. And if they want to do the extraordinary circumstances, you need the entire board to approve it. So if you look at the sheet with all the rates on it, 2020, that's 5 years ago, 2023, any new rate structure, any new study, you'll see a lot of new studies. Osceola is a perfect example that just jumped up. So Indian River's doing a study right now as well.
Yeah, because what was it saying? It was like 60% of the board approval under the
Two-thirds
old.
right
Before it's
now.
two-thirds, currently two-thirds.
Now it's unanimous.
January will be unanimous.
Yeah.
And capped at 50% if there wasn't wasn't an increase in 5 years or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
4
last
years.
5 years.
So it's like you either do it now, or like next time they need the study, you're only going up 50% at 5,700.
Well, I didn't see
which
the
is
part
still
where it says
short.
staff recommends ripping off the Band-Aid.
Well, for example, Fort Pierce. Staff. 08 was the last time they did a study.
Yeah.
So they'll be doing a study soon. I can almost guarantee that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody could have even predicted like the growth from, or, to as extreme as it was from, let's just say, 2019 to what it is right now. I don't think anybody saw that coming the way it did. So.
Well, when it comes to the costs, what do you guys see based on your studies as the main drivers of cost increases? Because costs did decrease in 08 from 05. So what is driving the cost increase now that you guys are seeing based on your studies? Is it labor? Is it material? Like, what is the main driver? I mean, it's not really land. Is it land acquisition for like right of ways? Is that like what's causing such a drastic?
All of it.
Thing?
Honestly, yes, all of it, and also the activity level. There's so much competition, even to get the suppliers, contractors, builders. The more activity you have, the cost go up.
It's like
So-
trying to find a home builder in Palisades right now.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I mean,
I actually had to talk to people from there. They said that's.
I just don't, for me, I think South Florida is just situated far better than the rest. I think it's just sitting better than the rest of the country right now. Like, I mean, it's the highest demand area. It's where everybody wants to be. So, if you're coming here, you should pay to be here.
Yeah. And I think if we do increase the fees, you can argue that it's either going to be priced into the cost of the build, or it's also going to lower the cost of the value of the land a little bit too. It's like if I had 100 acres, if I come in here and I get a site plan approved for 15 units an acre, what's that worth to a developer compared to the identical parcel at 4 units an acre, right? So it's all a matter of the market, and it's all in what you set. And like I said, it sounds like we've just been subsidizing it with below market rates forever, and then
Have
we're
you guys
left
had
holding
a, sorry, have you guys had a meeting with like stakeholders, like developers, land use attorneys, engineers, contractors?
So, Chair
CBA?
Benner, Commissioner Getler, today we had a stakeholder meeting to talk about the extraordinary circumstances provision within statute. We have to do 2 mandatory stakeholder workshops or public workshops, so we'll be holding another one before our Board of County Commissioners next month. We also are having 2 public meetings before our board, and we've brought this up at our board informal workshops. I think we've discussed this 3 different times, but.
Have we advertised it out to Chamber of Commerce? Is who?
Chambers, our Development Review Committee
Okay.
members, those folks on our distribution list.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Well,
Mr. Belcher, I'd much rather see us adopt this plan on impact fees than to try to raise more taxes. I think that affects everybody across the county, whether you build a house or not. Impact fees affect just those that are building or buying. Do we have any feel for the county commission and how they thought about this versus raising millage or lowering millage? They all want to lower millage, but you can't increase services and lower millage. That scale don't work.
So Chair Benner, Commissioner Lowndes, we have discussed the need to increase our impact fee rates with the board, and that stemmed from discussions late in 2024. Early in February 2025, as I mentioned, that's when we contracted with Banesh to update the road impact fee study. So they're well aware of, and we also presented to the board at a special informal meeting where we only talked about road impact fees, the recommended rates, and they were the ones who suggested that we look at a rural versus urban rate structure. So they are well aware of what we're proposing, and now what they choose to do as far as adoption, whether that be at a phased-in rate, a reduced rate, at the full rate, that remains to be seen. Obviously, at those informal workshops, they don't provide, they don't vote on anything. They provide, their feelings if they're willing to share those. But there are sunshine laws where you don't get together and discuss as a group. So we'll be meeting with them. They know the outcome of the study, what the recommended rates are, and we'll see where it goes from there.
My problem with a phase-in situation is it doesn't help us now, it doesn't help us halfway through, and by the time we get to the other half of phase-in, we're already behind.
I think the phase-in is more of an optic, if you really wanted to put it out there like that. What's your recommendation, man? What's staff recommending?
So staff is recommending the full rate, adoption at the full rate.
Immediately?
And that would go into effect on January 1st, because we have to advertise any rate increase for 90 days.
Devil's advocate questions. So if I'm a developer and I'm doing a big project, if I come in and can provide road improvements at a lower cost than $12,273 per unit, economics would say, as a developer, I'm going to do that and get the credits that I can transfer, right? Does that make sense?
Arguably, and Chairman, we certainly have projects where we're taking a look at committed improvements, and that process is achieved where they build the roads, whether it's new roadways in the southwest annexation area, expansion of Midway Road, expansion of Glades Cutoff, as we see new developments in that area. So if it's part of a structured agreement, that's possible.
Chairman, just to elaborate, if a developer comes in to do a road improvement for, let's say, $7 million, and these fees equate to $8 million, they're going to get a credit for $7 million, and that'll offset as they pull permits towards this fee. So in essence, they're still going to pay this fee. They just got to pay $7 million for that project, and then another $1 million as they're building the homes. So they're not losing anything and not getting anything. The problem now is that they have more money because their fees are discounted. So when they're done with their project, they still have money left over, and they can transfer to another property or another developer within the zone.
But they would have to build $9 million worth of roads and only build $8 million worth of houses, right?
Yeah, but the fee's discounted, so they're getting a discount on that. So they're getting a gift card for $9 million, and this is discounted, so maybe it's only $5 million. They have $3 million left over. Now they can transfer to another property, another developer.
But as a developer, wouldn't that incentivize me to build extra roads right now? Because then that gift card balance isn't worth $5,000 a unit. I can sell it for $10,000 a unit to the developer next door, save him $2,000 a unit, and I'm making the difference, right?
Ideally, yes, but the improvements have to be approved by the board as well as the staff.
Okay.
And we come up with, based on the traffic study, what is needed. They can't just arbitrarily say, I want to.
You don't let them
Midway Road.
over-improve just for profit.
They can suggest it, but we still have to approve it, and it has to be within the comp plan and based on the traffic study.
Okay. And then, if there is a drastic decrease in the cost of construction, how is it handled with lowering impact fees because we're seeing costs go down? Are we stuck to every 5 years, or what is it?
We saw that during the Great Recession.
Yeah.
The communities that updated their fees during the boom found themselves, they noticed that their costs are coming lower, and many of them did a study to lower their fees to where it
Do
should be.
extenuating circumstances?
Yes, and some jurisdictions without doing a study. So lowering the fees is very easy. The board can just make that decision, and tomorrow they are lower.
Okay.
It's increasing the fees is a lot harder.
All right. So if they increase them, even if they just rip the Band-Aid off, a year down the road, there's some sort of change in pricing, they can just vote and reduce them. We don't got to go through all the hearings and workshops and all that stuff. They can course correct down. It's just course correcting up. That's slow, tedious, and
Yes. And
cumbersome.
during the Great Recession, you saw some municipalities, they actually put moratoriums on impact fees to try to increase growth. But like Negan said, it is a lot easier to reduce the rate than increase the rate.
Gotcha.
Yeah, for instance, if you increase the rate, we need to advertise in 90 days. And when it does go into effect, it only applies to applied permits. So if it goes into effect January 1,
Applies to what?
when you apply for the permit. So if I apply for a permit December 31st, I'll still have the old rates, even though I'm going to build it sometime next year. The rate goes into effect January 1, and that only goes into effect when you apply for your permit. Vice versa, if we lower the fee, it takes effect immediately. We don't have to wait 90 days to advertise it, and we don't have to wait till you apply. So to your scenario, we can do that immediately if the board chose to.
I have seen this county reduce its millages to the point that it was impacting our survival at times. It may be heresy, but I don't see reducing millage nor reducing this rate if we're going to try to continue to move ahead and at least have a chance to catch up with what we need to do for infrastructure. We ain't never going to catch up, but we ought to try to get closer.
So are we voting on a recommendation to send to the?
So you will make a recommendation. This is a public hearing. You'll still have to open it up to the public.
All right. You guys good with staff for now?
Yep.
All right, so this is a public hearing. If we got any member of the public that wish to address the board on this agenda item, come on down.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, Lee Dobbins with the Dean Mead Law Firm. I'm here in Fort Pierce. I'm actually here for another agenda item, but I deal with impact fees and mobility fees a lot, so I just wanted to clarify one thing. A developer never, if they get credits for building a road, they never end up selling them for a profit to another developer. They always end up selling them for pennies on the dollar. And the simple reason for that is if another developer has impact fee credits that they can't use in their own development because they have too many of them, and then they come to me as another developer and say, I'd like to sell my credits to you, I'm not going to pay full dollar for it because those credits would have to be used in my development, and let's say I bought $200,000 worth of credit. Well, I would use those $200,000 worth of credits, building permit after building permit after building permit as I'm pulling the permits. I'd rather hang on to my own cash. Cash is better than credits. So you always end up selling them for pennies on the dollar, and the market for them may be limited because there's a finite number of developers you can sell them to. They may have their own credits that they're trying to use, and the last thing they want to do is have more credits that they've got to use on the back end after they've used their credits. So just wanted to clarify that for you guys.
Pretty sure.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Deb Frazier. I am the Executive Officer for the Treasure Coast Builders Association. I'd like to clarify a couple things. I got an email yesterday at 3:54, I think. I'm a stakeholder, obviously, our association is, at 3:54 yesterday telling about the meetings today. So I had less than 24 hours notice, first of all. Second of all, I was then informed that it was put on your website a week ago. I'm sorry, I don't look at your website every day, I'm going to be honest. You have a nice one, but I don't look at it every day. I came to the earlier presentation today at 2 o'clock. I want to let you know it lasted 20 minutes. It was only a fraction of this. So we did not get the entire presentation, so I had a lot of questions. So I came back this evening because I wanted to let you know that this has been really, as a stakeholder, I want to say this has been very rushed. I've had absolutely no time to look at these numbers, to look at anything that I can come to you with any sort of intelligent conversation, quite frankly. Basically, what I have are questions. I will tell you, you're absolutely correct. The developer is going to pass that price on to the new construction. A couple of you are in real estate, so you know that's true. St. Lucie City is looking at maybe, okay, top number, $40,000 increase in their mobility fee. Added to your $12,000, we're looking at in the neighborhood of $50,000, over $50,000 that's going to go into every house. Your children that are looking to buy here and you want to keep here are not going to be able to afford it, and because all of these fees go together on one property. The other problem is if you slow down development, as was suggested, these fees only come from development. So if you slow down development, you're shooting yourself in the foot because then you're not collecting those impact fees. And so I think that's a real concern. Sales tax increase. We have all these new people that are buying all kinds of new stuff, and my husband will attest, I have contributed to your sales tax here, trust me. Where is all that money? I didn't see that in the study at all. How much more money are you getting in sales tax that is offsetting some of these dollars that was not discussed at all in this study? So I would ask that question. Buc-ee's is coming in. What kind of money is that going to bring in to the county? And you're looking at that kind of money. Is that going to help with road improvements, that kind of thing? And I guess I wanted to ask, why are we not discussing bonds? Why are bonds not being discussed to help offset some of this cost as well? And I guess my question too is, I've only been here 2.5 years. I've always wanted to live in Florida. My daughter lives here, so we came here. Why should the burden be higher on me because I chose to come live here? I lived where I was from my entire life and decided to come here because it is a wonderful area, and I love this area, and I love the sunshine. And you're just going to continue to have people who come from states like Illinois where it's freezing cold. And then just one last thing I wanted to say, what you're going to see, I'm afraid, is if you continue to do this, is you're going to see people start leaving this area. You see the people from West Palm Beach moving up here because they can afford it. You're going to see people here start moving north because they're not going to be able to afford it. So the housing market is not great right now, as these real estate agents know. It has taken a huge downturn. I would certainly get the realtors in here to talk to them about what does the housing market look like right now, the Realtor Association, because it is not good in our area, and builders are truly buying down points. They're buying down houses. We've got a lot of houses sitting empty right now. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.
Because I know you all volunteer, so thank you.
Thank you.
We got anybody else from the public? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, come back to the board for discussion and/or a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lowndes.
for the point of discussion on this board, I move that we approve staff's recommendation and pass it on to the county commission at the level and percentages that they've requested.
I think as discussion, I think there needs to be some sort of increase. It wouldn't penalize, any increase wouldn't penalize people that are already here. It's only for new development. And if we don't increase it, you then do further penalize people that are already here because you got to come up with the shortfall somehow. Or you're going to live with congested,
If we're honest,
underimproved
most people
roads.
that live here can't afford to build or buy here anyway.
Exactly.
Everybody's kind of sitting
Yeah.
still where they're at
Mhm.
anyhow, right?
Mhm.
You got all these developments with $400,000, $500,000 homes. No locals here that I know are buying homes, right? So it's already outpriced. If for somebody who's been, I mean, I've been here my whole life. My family's been here over 100 years. We can talk about it. Everybody wants to move here. It's great. It was really great 40 years ago when nobody was here, right? And so we can be like, hey, man, so we talk about slow down growth and who are we building for? That's my question all the time. Who are we building homes for, right?
And they may go further north, but you go like Vero Lake Estates and half the roads are dirt and everyone's got septic tanks in their front yard. A lot of people don't like that.
I think like so if we look at this and like you look at Port St. Lucie, right, and they had a really good build out over 40 years, right? I would say that, they're behind the ball as far as infrastructure goes, just driving around down there. I can't say for sure. I don't know what the study on that would be, but I would think if you drove in that area, you would be like, man, this sucks, right? Just because the traffic is so bad. I don't want that in Fort Pierce, right? Like if we're going to have future growth, we talk about zone 2, zone 1, zone 2, because that's your next
That's where it's
build of
going,
St.
yeah.
Lucie County. Man, I don't want that up here, right? And so how do you even overcome that, right? So you either have to have the fees in place to build adequate infrastructure, right? Or you stop building and we don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? What's the solution?
And in Port St. Lucie too, like there's not as many buildable lots, like scatter lot wise, there's not as many buildable lots now as there was pre-COVID. You know?
Well,
I think somebody I had a builder tell me that there used to be like 30 grand or 30,000 lots. Now they're like less than 10,000 scattered lots in PSL. So PSL, other than the new like Oak Ridge ranches and stuff, in that area, a lot of that is.
Well, that's what I said. I mean, there's not
They're running
there's
out.
not a ton left. If we talk about future growth, that's zone 1, zone 2, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking north of
TBC
Okeechobee
and-
Road, and,
yeah.
yeah, all that stuff up there.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion, guys, because I don't want to see the county in the future have to raise millage, have to raise taxes that affects everybody.
Agree with that. So can we ask, like, so do you guys want to address any of the comments that she made about bonds or sales tax or any of that stuff?
So I can chime in. For bonds, they still have to be paid, so we still need the revenue to secure the bond. So right now, if you saw, we had a $285 million shortfall that's projected. That'll keep increasing as we keep going along where we are now. So the bonds, it's really a wash because we need the revenue to pay for the bond. Can't just do the bond, we still have to pay back. Regarding the fee in Port St. Lucie, their proposed fee currently is an all-inclusive rate. So if you look at that at face value, it wouldn't be that plus our road impact fee rate. We would have to work with PSL on adopting our study and their study and interlocal agreement to narrow down that fee. But their fee would be an all-inclusive rate. It wouldn't be in conjunction with our fee. Our fee is also reduced because it only looks at county roads. The city covers city roads currently. So even though the rate is projected to be $12,273, within the city PSL, our rate would be around $4,500 around there. So it's significantly decreased because you also pay the mobility fee in the city.
Gotcha.
So you're not paying $12,000 plus what they're looking at. It's not a $40,000, $50,000 shock like that.
Didn't you guys have one of the slides too that had in there like wasn't like 1 point some million in sales tax revenue?
Yes, so that's why I wanted to say, any revenues that are being used otherwise, are already accounted for. Basically, we gave credit for those against the cost. Yeah, it was, I think, here. So but that was the point. All of the sales tax pretty much is going for resurfacing, maintenance of the existing roads. So there's very little coming toward capacity. So the county is relying mostly on impact fees for capacity. So, yeah.
And at 12,000, that's only for building. That's the estimated cost to cover new roads, not bringing up the deficiency we've been running.
Correct.
Based on having subsidized impact fees for the last so many
Correct.
years. So that's not even covering the shortfall we've been running because we haven't been willing to collect the true cost. That's only new roads going forward. We're still going to be we're still holding that bag.
Right.
And have to deal with it. Gotcha. So we got a motion.
We don't have a second yet, I don't think.
I'll second.
All right, motion to approve as stated with county for immediate implementation, right?
Yes.
Second by Mr. Slay.
Yeah. And so when does this go in front of the board, county commissioners?
Yeah, so August 19th is the first hearing, and then September 2nd will be the second hearing and the adoption. Then the rates would go into effect January 1.
Gotcha. Go.
Call the roll.
All right. Commissioner Neese,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowndes,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gettler,
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Slay,
Yes, ma'am.
sorry, Chair Benner.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Motion carries. Thank you, staff. And next up, we have agenda item 9G, Land America Self-Storage at Wawa. It's quasi-judicial.
Man, someone.
Good evening again, Tahir Curry for the record. Agenda item 9G is a request for conditional use permit to allow for the development of a 3-story, 100,008 square foot climate controlled interior self-storage facility known as Land America Storage at Wawa. in accordance with the St. Lucie County Land Development Code advertising. It was within the St. Lucie County News Tribune on July 3rd, 2025. A sign placed on the property and notices sent to property owners within 500 feet of the subject site. Here's the area of the site. It is 3.24 acres. It's located northwest corner of Midway Road and Selvix. The property is zoned planned non-residential development within the commercial future land use designation. The site is within the urban service boundary. The proposed storage is located west, will be located west of the existing Wawa convenience store, with plans to subdivide the 3.24 acre site into a 2.44 acre property, and the remaining amount of that will be 0.84 for a commercial parcel, future commercial parcel. As mentioned, the site is planned non-residential development. This just give you a little history of the Wawa Midway Selvix PNRD. When it came in, it was back in 2019. It was commercial neighborhood, then it was rezoned to PNRD as it is today. Back in 2022, as you know, today the Wawa convenience store exists. That site was subdivided, which now you have the two parcels back in 2023. And then in May of last year, we took the site because it didn't allow for self-storages, so they did a amendment to the PNRD to allow for self-storages as a conditional use, and that the height could not exceed 45 feet, and that's where we are today with the self-storage coming in. So here's a snapshot of the site, the climate control facility. Some of the features that it would have in it, as mentioned, it'll be a 3-story climate control facility, 100,008 square feet, would include office space located at the southeast corner of the building, 13 parking spaces, 2 loading zones, a bicycle rack, dumpster enclosure, sidewalk connectivity, landscaping, and then this is the whole entire site. As you can see, the Wawa's to the east. The future development of the site is in the middle, and then to the far west is the proposed convenience store, proposed self-storage facility location. So as you can see, it shows sidewalk connectivity throughout the site. It shows sidewalk connectivity from Midway Road. It shows that it would have a future connection going east, that where it says future development, and whoever develops a future development of that site, they will further extend it to eventually connect to the Wawa, so you would have a full connectivity on that site. The applicant is proposing to have 24 public building access, with security access, of course. The office operational hours is Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Sundays, 10 a.m. to 4, and that is the office hours, but anyone that's going outside of those hours will have the code access as your typical storage facility would have. And also, they would be adding a cross access to the west. They'll be adding in that off of Midway Road, so the site will have full connectivity, sidewalk and road access to both of the sites, connectivity. Here's just the architectural elevations showing that it is proposed at 43 feet. That is the max, and that is within the allowable. The max was 45 when we approved the PNRD amendment. Some of the features it will have: Tower Bahama shutters, canopy, arches, to make sure that those things, 6 architectural elements it would have. Actually, they'll be giving more than 6 architectural elements, which complies with the code. I think with this architectural design, they really tried to make sure it looks like an office building. Also, you can kind of tell it kind of looks a little bit the same colors as the wall to kind of almost blend in with that color element. Here's a quick snapshot of the landscape plan. I'm just showing the landscaping that we'll be adding along Midway Road, also to the north around the dry detention area. Foundational plantings along the building itself, also along the perimeter of parcel 2, which is the future development parcel that will come in. They'll already have some landscaping on that parcel as well. Also, they will be extending the existing wall that's located on Wawa site. They'll be extending it west to the western property line. Also, the northern property line west and along the western part of the site, they will be extending or building a brand new wall to make sure that it is screened from residential area, landscaping on both sides to comply with the code. The commercial subdivision is designed to have 3 driveways, one right in, right out driveway on Celtics Road, a right in, right out driveway on Midway Road, and one left in, right out driveway on Midway Road. The site will have a cross-access easement between parcel 1 and the future parcel 2. And the site is pretty much a lower traffic generator based, as you can see, Wawa is there, so that is more of a high traffic generator compared to the level of traffic and trip generations we are expecting for the site. It was based on the 11th edition trip generation for that site, which typically would say about maybe 15, total about 15, 8 outward coming into the site. So not a really high traffic generator for a self-storage facility. So pretty low moderate as compared to a convenience store Wawa. They did have a neighborhood meeting on March 24th, 2025 at the White City Improvement Club. We had the developers that was there. Some neighbors did show up, voice their concerns or questions they might have had regarding the cross access or just the building design. So they did have that there. We did hold it just to get engaged the neighbors if they had any questions or concerns about the petition. As mentioned, meltdown notice was sent out to property owners within 500 feet. The planning department did receive one response back, not in favor. That was provided within the agenda packet. They did not state their reasoning behind it or anything like that. They just said not in favor of the proposed self-storage. And also, this is just our standards when we're looking at a conditional use petition. Just make sure it complies with the local code comprehensive plan, which it does as far as landscaping, the height element as we approved the PNRD amendment last year. So just making sure those things are in line. Any impacts on the adjacent property owners will have any major impacts. This is a commercial site. They are screening, landscaping a wall. They want to keep the height not too tall in the area at 43, and some of the other buildings in the area are along Midway is about around the same height or so. Just making sure that the building is not too tall. Adequate public facilities in the area. As far as like water, sewer, we'll be connecting to those services. Fire protection, it is a fire along Midway Road more east. Environmental impacts, And just being alone of that, just making sure they comply with all their environmental things they need to submit in for, ensuring that. Staff recommendation, the conditional use permit conforms to the standards of review as set forth in the St. Lucie County Land Development Code and is consistent with the comprehensive plan, goals, objectives, and policies. Staff recommends this petition be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners with a recommendation of approval subject to the following conditions. Finalize site plan, finalize architectural plans, just making sure we list all the elements on there, making sure that it does comply with code, which based on the exhibits we do have, it does, but we want to ensure that it does based off listing those that they're applying for. Ensuring just to finalize traffic report, which we did receive that a couple days ago, so they did get approval on that based on Kimberly Horn review, but that was already in, just ensuring that that was completed. And some environmental things that they should make sure they have as well, tree mitigation, vegetation removal permits. There's a lot of vegetation on site, so they'll need to have those permits finalized as well. Tree surveys, revised landscape plan. There was some couple things they needed to revise, and being that the site is vegetated, they'll of course need to have a vegetation removal permit, and invasive species will be eradicated from the site. And one of the standard things is a site development permit as well, as far as the road improvements that they'll be doing in that area. This includes staff presentation. The agents, they do have a presentation of their own as well.
Quick question, did you include the turtles on that? Did we get that turtles on that for the environmental? Was that one of the conditions? Or is it just trees? It does? Okay. I always thought there was like a separate one for
So
turtles.
Chair Benner, members of the commission, we do have a Gopher Tortoise survey being required, and so that would be a component of it. It's a pretty well-wooded site, so that diminishes the prospects of Gopher Tortoises, but certainly where we live, if I were betting, I would bet that there's something present. But yes,
Didn't see, that's cool.
that would be accounted for.
Yeah, it's this, I'm sorry, I probably bypassed it when I didn't click over, but it's the one here, go for tortoise. Sorry about that.
No worries. Mr. Lowndes.
Mr. Curry, Mr. Benton, can you tell me a little bit about what possibly, without going into too depth, could go into this other piece that's not developed yet with
The
it,
future development, as it says.
between the building and Wawa?
It is a lot of different uses they can put. It was more so approved within the commercial neighborhood uses in mind. So that's what we'll look at. But if they have something outside of that scope, if it's more of an intense use, it may have to come in and get an amendment such as the storage facility. But you can have more so like a car wash, a small little office building, or like a restaurant may want to come in. So they can have things like that
Okay.
within that.
Thank you.
All right, no other questions for staff? Does the applicant want to come on up and present?
Good evening. For the record, again, Lee Dobbins with the Dean Mead Law Firm here in Fort Pierce, here representing the applicant, Land America. I want to thank staff for their work on this, and Mr. Curry really covered most of what I wanted to talk about, so I don't really have a whole lot to go over. So as he mentioned, in May of last year, we saw it and received approval from the Board of County Commissioners for the amendment to the PNRD to allow for this use as a conditional use. And after obtaining that approval, my client, Land America, purchased this property from Wawa. And so now we're coming forward under the existing PNRD and under the PNRD amendment to get our conditional use approval for the self-storage site. And I really just wanted to show a couple of images of it. Can I use, here, just click down to the next one for me. You already saw it in the package that Mr. Curry was presenting, but they wanted to make it look good. We understand that being on a major corridor, that we wanted an attractive building that looks good, that looks like an office building, and I think they did a good job with that. What on the top, what you see there is what you would look at looking from the Wawa site to the east, and then on the bottom there is the south elevation of looking dead on to it from Midway. Then hit the next one. And then that's the rear facing, that faces away from the public. And then one more. And that's the architect's rendering. So that's looking at the building from Midway, looking northwest toward the building. So at any rate, they wanted to build an attractive facility. I'm sure you've read the staff report. Staff's found that we've met the standards of review, and they're recommending approval with certain conditions listed in the staff report. We have no objection to any of the conditions, and so we're just asking for your recommendation of approval on the conditional use. Assuming the conditional use is granted by the Board of County Commissioners, the next step would be that we would come forward with final site plan approval subject to those conditions. And that's basically it. Our team's here to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Dobbins, did you acquire the whole piece? So they'll have phase 2 is now.
Yes, Land America acquired that entire balance there, so it's this building plus that undeveloped portion.
Gotcha. Cool.
Mr. Lentz?
Mr. Dobbins, I got to tell you, my hat's off to you and the developer and the owner of making this thing look like something besides a big square block. I wish more people had that much interest in improving the looks of this county than what we've had in the past. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate that. I'll pass that along to them.
Please do.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, this is a public hearing. If we have any member of the public that would wish to address on this agenda item, come on up to the mic, name and address for the record, and the floor is yours.
My name is, I have to press button.
No, you're good.
My name is Vince Peterson. I reside at 4911 Selvets Road. I am the property owner to the north. I want to first thank you guys for the opportunity to bring my concerns to you. I just have a few. The first concern that I have is with the barrier that's proposed, the vinyl fence. And I'd like to explain some issues that I've had, my experiences with the Wawa that was approved at the Wawa site plan. During last year's storm Milton that we had, it took considerable damage. A lot of the fence post caps blew off. Most all of them blew off. The fence was pushed over. Wawa failed to address it. I had to go over into the easement there and push it over myself. If that would have been a stronger storm, it would have been considerable damage to that fence. Secondly, that barrier there with the landscaping has not been maintained properly. And my concern is a lot of the soundproofing trees that they put there died off. The barrier didn't provide sufficient enough soundproofing, so we get a lot of noise from that. I would like to see or recommend that there be a masonry wall there or some kind of prefab concrete panel instead of a flimsy vinyl fence. The back half of where this is proposed is my property is zoned agriculture. I have farm animals. My concern of that is with that, because that's going to be my pasture area. So I have that concern. The second concern that I have is privacy from it being so high. I see that there's some windows, and this may be addressed. I do see some shutters there, but my concern is from the second and third story windows, how is that going to provide me security on my property from people looking in? So that's a concern. And also vagrants. One of the things that I had issue with Wawa is that with the not maintaining it, the lack of adequate security deterrence, have vagrants sleeping and camping out in that easement, coming onto my property, trying to break in my house. I have one incident where someone tried to break into my house that came from that was camping in that area, so I have a concern there. The other concern that I have is with this being a 24-hour facility, I'd like to ensure that there's going to be proper security for me, because that is the back half of the property. It's not going to be seen by the public. It's not by the road, so I'm concerned about that. So I just real quick ask that you guys, I'm not a lot knowledgeable with this. You guys are. If you could just keep my privacy, security.
Are you the property right behind it?
Yes, sir, right behind it.
To the north?
To the north, yes,
Okay.
sir. And so my concern is if you guys could just consider me and my resale and my privacy.
That's
I'd
your
appreciate it.
driveway coming off Selvets right there?
Yes, sir. And thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
And one thing too to keep in mind, with what we're doing now would be just a conditional use permit. They'd have to come in on the site plan is where you can address a lot of like the plantings, like windows
Walls.
on the back, walls, stuff like that. On this, a lot of those drawings that we get, that's not what we're voting on either. It's just saying like if this passes, then that means they could put the storage units on there. The site plan has a lot of the specifics you discussed.
Yes, sir.
So if this does pass, I would definitely get the applicant's information. And I mean, just from my time on the board, I've seen a lot of times when the neighbors have conversations with them, they have a lot of leverage. They can try and get stuff. The sooner you get in and express your concerns with them direct, best chance of getting stuff like that taken care of. Because if I lived next there and I had it falling down like that too, I'd have the same concern. So
Yeah. So one thing that I'd like to point out, I know my time's up, but the letter that went out, I didn't receive. I didn't find out about the public meeting that at the White City thing until after it was over.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I got missed or how that happened. I did talk to Dominic based on the yellow sign and what information I was able to provide, and he kind of stayed in touch with me, so I was able to do that. But one issue that I have with Wawa is we did that with Wawa in a good faith. They came out to the site, their representative, we discussed everything, but when it come time for the building, he told me it's not going to happen. This was what was approved. Sorry. And so I just want to make sure that, because two things, my security and privacy for my family, but when I do sell or decide to sell in the future, I want to make sure that that doesn't hurt me. And I'm not as knowledgeable about this as you guys, so I was hoping maybe you guys could make some recommendations on my behalf.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else in the public that'd like to address the board? Seeing none, we will close the public comment and come back to the board for discussion. Staff, real quick, in regards to if we require a fence and landscape buffer, if it dies or the fence fails, what steps does the county take to enforce that with this site when we're looking to add more, but it sounds like from the neighbors it might not be.
If we had a dynamic code enforcement, it'd been taken care of, but we don't. Our code enforcement is static.
Chair Benner, members of the commission, a few talking points, if I may. As Commissioner Lowndes indicated, in recent years, code enforcement has been more reactive, responding to complaints that could be lodged by adjacent property owners. For this particular development, given that it includes a conditional use, the enforcement and follow-up does swing under the lens of our planning compliance specialist, which is housed within the Planning and Development Services Department. James Glover is that team member who follows up with inspections and responses to any particular complaints of maintenance. That would be for this proposed development, not necessarily Wawa. However, part of his responsibilities are to be able to follow up with site plans and compliance with those approved covenants and the landscape plans. So I do know at one point previously he's been out to Wawa to inspect it and provide a punch list of anything that needs to be replaced or updated to ensure maintain compliance. So that said, we do have some mechanisms. Did want to provide an overall update that the county is transitioning to a magistrate for the code enforcement board, so that could potentially support consistency.
Will he have teeth?
You can make that argument, sir. So that we do have some mechanisms in place. That said, obviously, the maintenance differential between a vinyl fence, wood fence, and masonry wall are clearly distinguishable.
And that'd be something that would be addressed on final site plan, not on conditional use, or something that could be added to conditional use? Because I think Tahir said about a wall, but yet I think on the plans it says wall or opaque fence.
Yes, so reasonable conditions can be applied to a conditional use where it's something that's going to mitigate any potential adverse effects on adjacent properties. In this instance, this particular conditional use, although they, occupants or customers may have extended hours for access, usually it's much more passive than something like a 24/7 gasoline service station. Lighting presumably would be notably different, and where vehicles and movements of people in and out of the building, ours is quite distinguishable, I think, from a 24/7 convenience store. But if this body deems it to be appropriate to recommend that enhanced, more maintenance-free fixture, that's something that you can guide to the Board of County Commissioners to consider. How our code is written today, there's the option for an opaque wall or fence. So again, stockade, blockade, wood fence, vinyl, or a wall. There's also options for wall waivers, but note that our landscape requirements are planted shrubs and some trees on both sides of the fence or wall, whichever material is selected.
Would they take into account if the one site had the opaque fence and it's failing and not being maintained, is that something that they typically would take into consideration? Since it does back up to ag, and if you have farm animals, a more solid structure sounds like it would make more sense separating the two.
Certainly,
at least on the back.
Certainly a consideration. One other alternative that staff has explored from time to time, for instance, on a plan like this, in lieu of pushing that fence up toward the northern property line, there's been consideration of potentially pushing it between the stormwater system and the structure, as long as it's not impeding the stormwater design. For instance, with the underground movements and pipes, catch basins, presumably it wouldn't adversely affect that, but that could provide layers, so where the fence is inset, what a neighbor sees then as green space retention, and then the fence and building.
But then how do you mow on the outside of the fence?
Gates.
Yeah, gotcha.
Will this come back before us?
This will come back for site plan or no? Just with you
Chair
guys?
Benner, no. One and done with this conditional use. The only reason such a development would be back before the planning and zoning is if somebody proposes a conditional use or an alternative non-allowable use on that future development parcel in the middle between.
So if we made recommendations, we need to do it now?
This is the opportunity, Commissioner.
When it goes to the plantings, because that's a really big building, so the plantings have to be proportionate to a 43-foot building? You're not going to plant a bunch of 6-foot tall palm trees to be a planting, or are they going to be like tall palm trees since you do have a 40, you know what I mean?
So, Chair Benner, the baseline requirements are going to be somewhat contingent upon the species selected. So for required trees, it's mandated that they be native species. Sable palms, it's usually a clear trunk height of 10 feet. For canopy trees, it's measured at the DBH at breast height, but also there's a little bit of a canopy spread at the time of planting that's considered. But we know an oak tree grows notably different than a sable palm or a holly, so that there's a balance there. When we are looking at 2-3-story buildings, oftentimes for our foundation plantings, we're recommending species that provide scale, complementary to the development, as opposed to something that's low level where all you see for the next 10, 20 years is a broadside of a facade. I think the applicant, at least through their renderings, suggests that they'll have a balanced size and scale of landscaping. And I think our landscape plan that we've reviewed for this project does provide pretty good balance. If there was probably anywhere where space might be constrained, it would be more on that west side. But they are structuring, again, through that cross access. And with that cross access and the property to the west location along Midway Road, I would anticipate that eventually would transition to a non-residential use. So that's more of a short-term dynamic of having lower level landscaping on the west side.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Benton, Mr. Curry, what's the width of the landscape barrier on the north side?
The listed dimension landscape buffer is 10 feet. That's where the plantings would more or less be concentrated. Given where that fence is shown, I think the plantings might actually extend in a broader fashion than the 10 feet, because some would be planted on the north side of the fence, and that fence appears to be offset into the property 10 feet. And then when you factor in the overall green space area, plus or minus 80 feet, you'll have landscaping with that area, within that general area.
You've heard my discussion on trying to have sound barriers in a 10-foot area. One, you can't hide a beehive in a palm tree. It ain't gonna happen. And 10 feet is not enough. You need 40 feet to make any kind of thick barrier for sound, sight, and such have you. It's just a given fact. You can't put enough thick planting in 10, 20 feet to do it. It takes 35 or 40 feet to make it. And I would suggest that the county think about that, especially on the north side. I don't know who's on the west side of this. What's on the west side of this? Brook Lake
Presently,
property?
there's a single-family home, Commissioner. It's owned by a local physician. He does not reside there. But given the non-residential uses in New Horizons further west and Wawa and the commercial to the east, staff would anticipate a gradual transition, especially as Midway Road is widened. And to the benefit of this particular site and their achievement of that cross-access, the Midway Road designs are anticipated to accommodate an eastbound directional left-north into the petition site jointly with that property situated to the west. So that would you'd have a balance of the increased traffic volumes on Midway Road, exposure, and directional access. So like I said,
If this is our last shot at this, then my recommendation is that you get a 40-foot barrier on the north side of it so that it acts as a sound and a sight barrier. And staff needs to address the resident's concern about privacy on the height of it.
Understood.
That would be one of my suggestions that we do for approval.
And what about like the windows on the back or stuff like that?
Yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, the hard part, right, is
on the
like,
north side. If those are fake windows, Mr. Dobb, no problem. But if it's, excuse me, if that's windows that are visible to people to get out and see, I think your neighbor will have a problem.
it's the hard part, right, is like I think we all actively work to get buffer in there.
Yeah.
But like he stated, if they put the fence in, they put a buffer, and the trees are dead and the fence is blowing over, I mean.
We ain't done nothing.
Then we didn't do nothing, did we?
And if the fence is failing already, what's the point of adding more fence?
Well, because I would imagine they would just continue the fence,
Yeah,
right?
which
Like-
I'd be supportive of our, even though it sucks because it costs money, but it's kind of the sin of the neighbor that
Yeah, but they're
proven they
encroaching
can't
on him.
maintain it.
Yeah.
I know, so it's like if it was maintained and nice already, then all right, but if it's failed and not being maintained, then
Yeah, I would rather see a 6 or 8 foot cementitious wall there.
Stephen
Cementitious,
Daggett
a
with
concrete.
Haley Ward. I'm the civil engineer record on the project. I worked on the Wawa project. I heard a point there. I just wanted to make sure because you talked about maintenance.
Yeah.
Make sure we know that these are two separate entities.
Yeah, Sure. yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just want to make sure
Yeah.
that point was because
Yeah.
I would hate for anything that be wearing on the situation, considerations about maintenance and all that. This is actually the first that I've heard about it since that store's been open, that something happened during Milton with that fence line. I'm hoping that's getting addressed or being addressed on that site. But I would want to make sure that that's not a reflection on this proposed developer who is really trying to make a strong motion to this board right now. Addressing the buffer out there, one thing I didn't hear stated that I want to make sure is clarified. There will be planting on both sides of either fence or wall there.
Okay.
So in terms of buffering, it's not just a single row there. That bank will be planted as you see proposed on the landscape plan now, with the fence or wall in between there, planting on both sides. Obviously ensuring maintenance and survivability of that, as staff's indicated here, is going to be important to the developer as well.
and the tree heights that are proposed are going to be relative to the building, like tall palm trees that at least. Because like if you put a bunch of 10-foot palm trees on a 40-foot building, it kind of looks weird.
Yeah, I understand, and I think my first statement there was I don't think it's just going to be a bunch of palm trees there.
Okay.
I think we have a mix of species along that. I didn't do the landscape plans on it, but to not overspeak of my professional responsibility on it, it's not going to be palm trees there. It will be canopy native trees there, as Corey indicated, DBH in accordance with code. Kind of not to go too retroactive on the history of this, but this was not converted from a residential use to, what it is today. It was commercial neighborhood before. It has been rezoned to a PNRD, but has historically always had a commercial use component to it. So, I know going back to the Wawa when we got that approved, that PNRD approval stated that it was going to remain consistent, aside from the couple other things that helped it kind of fit the mold there a little bit more, retaining all of the allowed uses from the commercial neighborhood. I think Ty, Mr. Curry alluded to that earlier too, with some of the uses that could be on the next phase, and that really there's only a little bit being asked for here in the context of the PNRD zoning. The historic zoning, land use with the commercial neighborhood zoning, that's all been retained in a lot of this. Just a few points I wanted to make sure.
Well, in regards to the wall, if the neighbor that backs to Wawa's said that the fence already got damaged from storms, which means added maintenance costs or coming back or code enforcement violations, would a good compromise be some sort of solid wall instead, so that way it doesn't blow down in storms and you don't have that issue down the road, at least just on that north side? Not that it's a reflection on property maintenance, but if it's can't withstand a storm and we haven't been hit with a direct hurricane and that Wawa fence is already messed up and you're backing up to ag property, a more solid type of fencing would suffice. In that situation, it's not like it's backing up to a neighbor's 6-foot wood fence. You have ag property, you could have farm animals and stuff that can get out, and then that's the animal owner's liability at that point.
Understood, yeah. I think all of those, in the context of which you just explained it, totally understandable. I'm not here to combat that issue too much. I will say, it was mentioned that it occurred during Milton, right? I mean,
I don't know. Is that
that storm ripped a roof off a 1 million square foot building. So to frame it in context, not too far from this site, so I was also fortunate enough to have worked on that project as well. But those things happen. I think the important part is that they do get maintained, they do get restored, they do get. I think hearing the concerns tonight are great. I don't know that that's a a sticking point between, paneling, masonry wall, anything else like that to beef that up some. I mean, I certainly think it's not the hill to die on the project.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but in discussions with the 40-foot buffer and all that, that's going to eat into where the proposed stormwater management system is. I mean, I think we can look at additional plantings or anything else that we can do in there to try and beef up some of that screen. But offsetting that 40 feet will obviously be a huge shift for the project. So if there's some way to keep that manageable, that would
Mr.
be.
Dobbs
I think that would be in the interest of
well
our.
suited to pick out landscape. He's been doing it a long time. He knows what makes a good barrier and what doesn't.
Right.
Chair Benner, members of the commission, if I may, on screen is a snapshot of the current landscape plan. One important update, and it's an active comment from our environmental resources team, is that a second layer of hedge material would be placed on the south side of the fence, which I believe Mr. Baggett had alluded to. Those shrub plants are on both sides of the fence. At least what's proposed currently is cocoa plum. The larger circles of trees situated around the stormwater area would be live oak trees. And then those smaller symbols along the property line are proposed as slash pines. So different species, different layers planted across that 80 to 100-foot area. So although it may not be as densely planted across that entire space, there's some dense plantings toward the property line and different layers across that open space.
Mr. Benton, there's some landscape material that's going in quite frequently now for hedges that are real thick.
Clusia.
Pardon?
Clusia.
Yes.
There's two species, one native to Florida, and that usually is an acceptable treatment.
They've been planted all over the county, and they get thick if you trim them, and they grow high and they thick.
Yep. Calusias.
Hmm?
The calusias.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Dobbs, are you familiar with those?
I'm an attorney, not a landscaping expert. You really don't want to ask me about plants because I'm not good at keeping things alive. But I do happen to have Calusia simply because it's one of those plants that's hard to kill. And I actually have it in my yard, and so I do know what that is. It's very thick, and if you cut it and fill up a garbage can with it, you can hardly move it.
Anything will get thick and stay thick. Myrtles have a tendency to die off.
I can make that recommendation to our landscaping people. Like I say, I'm not the right person to talk about that.
Thank you.
And we can also look into the windows on the backside. I don't know, that'd be a question for our architect. I don't know if those are real or if they're faux, but we can ensure that there are not windows looking out from the
If they're for
second floor
aesthetic
back.
value, then facing north is not going to be helpful aesthetically for the neighbor.
Right.
It would be if they're south and over Midway or east and west, but not north.
That's
Just thought.
something we can easily address.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, or do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lowndes.
I move that we approve item number 9G with the added conditions that the fence on the barrier fence line on the north side be thick enough to provide privacy, and that the applicant show a concern on the windows for the building.
All right, so we got a motion to approve with conditions. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Slay. Can we call the roll?
Commissioner Neese,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowndes,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gettler,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Slay,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Benner.
Yes, ma'am.
Approved.
Awesome, motion carries. Thank you guys very much. And to close us out this evening, we got Triangle Farms with Miss Irene, who stuck out the whole meeting to the very end.
Chair Benner, members of the commission, while Irene Settlemeyer, senior planner, arrives, did want to make note there was a document provided at each of your chairs this evening submitted by a representative of the city of Port St. Lucie pertaining to the subject legislative proposal.
Thank you. Hello, Sunshine.
Good evening, Chair Benner, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Irene Settlemeyer, Senior Planner with the Planning and Development Services Department. This is the public hearing for Triangle Farms proposed future land use map amendment. They are requesting to change the future land use from Ag 5 to MXD, mixed use development, with specific use activity area policies. The intent of the future land use map amendment is to permit commercial uses, light industrial uses, and some limited residential development. The public hearing was, public notice includes the signs on the property, the published newspaper advertisement, and the mailed notice, which to 500, within 500 feet, just included 7 property owners. We did, I did receive a request for more information from one representative of a property owner. I provided that, did not hear anything further. And we received comment from the city of the Port St. Lucie. So the subject site is located at the confluence of Shin Road, Midway Road, and Okeechobee Road. And it is this special location that may qualify this property for consideration for the MXD special, the MXD future land use designation. It's newly included within the urban services boundary. The city of Port St. Lucie is immediately adjacent, catty corner across Midway and Shin. The site is adjacent to the 235 acres that are the county fairgrounds. And finally, Okeechobee Road is identified as a strategic highway corridor on the Florida DOT strategic intermodal system. So the predominant existing land uses in the area are rural and agricultural. With, for a few miles around, it remains predominantly rural and agricultural. As I just mentioned, however, the land is in the urban services boundary, though at one of the edges of the urban services boundary. This graphic shows the pink being the urban services boundary. The city of Fort Pierce city limits are outlined in green, and the city of Port St. Lucie's boundaries are outlined in yellow. So you can see the cities are coming close. The property is about 3.5 miles from the interchange with I-95 and Midway Road. This shows some of the existing approved and proposed development in the area. There's the residential that exists, such as Carlton Country Estates and Hidden Estates and Arrow Estates. They've been there for a while. Large lots, 2-acre lots or 5-acre lots. To the southeast of the subject site, there are several residential projects that are either completed and occupied or under construction and being still reviewed and approved with Oak Ridge Ranches. Yeah, so it speaks for itself. 3.5 miles, I guess, to the interchange with I-95. Proposed P1 Motor Club further to the west. The future land use map shows the predominance of the Ag 5 future land use designation. We also have a little bit of commercial, 2.1 acres and 2 parcels there. The small convenience store, 3,000 square foot convenience store at the corner of Shin and Okeechobee. The public facilities future land use covers the fairgrounds, and there's an area here for transportation and utilities. I forget exactly what's there. There's a lot of power lines, is my understanding. Public facilities is intended primarily for places, schools and educational places or places of worship, but things like jails or county administration buildings are also permitted in public facilities. We have a key comprehensive plan policy that we have to address, and that is that when a future land use map amendment is being considered, the board of county commissioners must find, prior to approving a future land use map amendment, that the property under consideration for the future land use map amendment is adjunct to or within 1/4 mile of the same or greater type of land use. So when I point out the public facilities and I say, that a jail could be located there or a public administration building, that might sound like it's fairly intense activity, but that includes no industrial activity and no commercial activity. To the southeast, the City of Port St. Lucie's future land use designations include their commercial general and residential low density. Again, neither of those would provide for any industrial uses. So the way staff has responded to this policy is to propose a specific use activity area policy that would provide that no rezoning to planned non-residential development, which will be required, but no rezoning or no development that can't take place in Ag 5 can occur until that policy is met, until existing land uses within 1,320 feet are at least as intense as or more intense than what is being proposed. But right now, considering the development standards and the permitted uses in the Port St. Lucie's future land use areas and in our public facilities future land use designation, I don't believe they are of the same intensity or greater intensity than what is requested. The zoning is consistent with the future land use as we might expect. Ag 5, the predominant one, institutional for the fairgrounds. The zoning on the part of Port St. Lucie that's closest to this property has not yet been determined and followed further to the east with a PUD. We have commercial neighborhood on the little 0.8 acre parcel and utilities zoning district. The subject land area, which is about 88 acres, most of it, like 58 acres, are the subject of 59 acres are the subject of a previously approved site plan and subdivision plat that created 9 parcels. That site plan and subdivision plat provided for shared access and egress easements to Okeechobee Road and to Midway Road. This parcel here was not included in that site plan and plat, and the site plan and the plat did not provide for any shared to mandate shared access and egress easements on these eastern lots to Shin Road, and that may be something that should be considered. It's not yet, it wasn't in staff's recommendation, but I think that it warrants some further consideration that we provide for access to Shin Road like we provided for Midway Road and Okeechobee Road, and that we bring this parcel into that arrangement. So again, this is just showing this is the land area that was the subject of the site plan and the plat, but this land area and this land area is included in this future land use map amendment and will be subject to the specific use activity area policies. So the mixed future land use designation is intended to identify those areas where innovative land use concepts are encouraged. It's to be used in those areas where traditional land use classifications do not afford the desired flexibility and community input in land use planning necessary to address local concerns. It's also appropriately used in areas of special or unique environmental consideration. So I identified some of the issues that why I think that this area qualifies for the mixed future land use designation, primarily being in the urban services district or in the urban services boundary where a full spectrum of public facilities and services are expected to become available, but they're not yet available. The proximity to another political jurisdiction that has its own land use planning goals, proximity to the county fairgrounds, and being located on a highway that's identified as part of the strategic intermodal system. So in the mixed use future land use designation, they can be accompanied by specific use activity area policies, and I'll go through a few that we have identified. The applicant proposed some, staff worked to put them more in the kind of language that usually appears in these policies. The applicant has agreed that our rewrite is acceptable to them. So all development is to take place pursuant to the planned non-residential development zoning processes. So that means preliminary development plans and public hearings before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners with the appropriate public notice. Now that we have our new, the ordinance that was just enacted by the Board of County Commissioners on July 1, neighborhood meetings will be mandated rather than just highly recommended. And I wanted to mention, in this case, there has not been a neighborhood meeting that organized by the applicants, but they have committed to doing so prior to holding the transmittal public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners. So anyway, no rezoning, so all development to take place pursuant to the planned non-residential zoning processes. No rezoning to the planned non-residential development zoning district shall be approved unless and until development of equal or greater intensity exists within 1/4 mile pursuant to Comp Plan Policy 1.1.2.1. They have proposed that these following are prohibited uses: manufacturing, outdoor storage, parking or sales of heavy vehicles such as trucks, campers, automobiles. An exception to the prohibition on manufacturing would be small-scale processing of local farm products, which may be permitted, except growing, packaging, or sale of marijuana would not be permitted. Residential development consistent with the Ag 5 future land use is permitted on the 21 acres owned by Tropical Landscape Farms, but no direct residential driveway access will be permitted to Midway or Okeechobee, so that any residential development will have to connect to the adjacent parcels and use those shared accesses. The county retains the right to initiate a future land use map amendment prior to 30% of the land being rezoned to planned non-residential development. You know, some of the thing is it's not certain what's going to take place out in the vicinity of this parcel. You know, is the county going to pursue the entertainment and recreation district that's described in the Parks Master Plan or not? Or what other kinds of things are going to be proposed? What's going to be proposed in the city of Port St. Lucie? So to the extent that some might consider this future land use map amendment may be premature, this is, one, it's a future land use map amendment, so it's intended to look to the future, and I think it can be reasonably anticipated that Ag 5 will not be the best future land use in the future, but this is providing, making it clear that if nothing happens there on this particular property, or little happens, and things are changing around it, the county could initiate another future land use map amendment. Transportation concurrency is required for site plan approval, as with all projects. The development standards, 25% minimum open space. That is consistent with what is required for the planned non-residential development zoning district. However, here we've clarified that stormwater facilities are not included in the open space. All development must be served by centralized water and wastewater, and that includes any residential development that occurs there. All light industrial uses shall be conducted indoors. There's a maximum floor area ratio of 0.5. So we've talked about floor area ratio. If you have a 1 acre lot and you have a floor area ratio of 1, you can build 43,560 square feet of building. So floor area ratio, so if you have a 1 acre lot, 1 acre is 43,560 square feet, you can build 43,560 square feet. Now maybe you do it in 2 stories, and so you cover half the lot, and it's 23,000 square feet, and then 23,000 square feet on top of it, or you could do it on a 10,000 square foot footprint and go 4 stories. That would be if your FAR is 1. A floor area ratio of 0.5 is half of that. So on a 1 acre parcel, you can build 43, like 21,000, 750, whatever, half of an acre, 21,000, 22,000 square feet would be permitted with an FAR of 5 on a 1 acre lot. However, maximum building coverage is 35%. So in order to reach an FAR of 0.5, you would be required to do a 2-story building, because 35% is less than 50%. Your maximum building coverage is 35%. To reach a floor area ratio of 0.5 would require a 2-story building. Maximum height of 40 feet or 3 stories, whichever is the lower of those two, 40 feet or 3 stories. And then they have agreed to using dark sky best practices for their lighting practices. Some other development, when I've had some other public hearings, I've heard people saying, what about the lights, all the light? And I think a lot of people who live in rural areas value the dark skies. So the staff recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve the transmittal of the proposed future land use map amendment, a revised transportation impact analysis, incorporating FDOT's methodology comments and incorporating the county reviewers' comments shall be provided prior to scheduling that transmittal public hearing. I would suggest that the Planning and Zoning Commission may wish to further recommend that a specific use area policy be considered, or you could urge us to recommend a policy regarding shared access for Shin Road and for the 14-acre parcel east of the North St. Lucie River Water Control District property, or any other reasonable policies that you would see fit to recommend. And that concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions that you might have. The applicant is represented by Zach Sierra from Cutler and Hearing, who has a presentation as well.
All right, let's want to go to the applicant first. All right, let's go.
Well,
All
thank
yours.
you, commissioners. For the record, Zach Cicera with Cutler and Hearing in Jupiter. I'm here on behalf of the property owner. Thank you, Irene, for such a detailed and comprehensive presentation. I'll try not to repeat too much that she mentioned, but since we know where the site is now, we know exactly what we're asking for, going from Ag 5 to MXD. If you could skip to the slide regarding the sub-area policies, it's pretty much all text, and I'll start there. So we really think that this land use amendment to MXD is not only a benefit to the owner, of course, but it provides the county the flexibility for a portion of it to be commercial and a portion of it to be industrial as well, which we've laid out in the sub-area policies. And there are a few interesting characteristics about this site, specifically towards the electrical capacity, which I'll get into the next slide. But just to cover the sub-area policies that, go back one slide, sorry about that.
Go back one?
Yeah, sorry about that. So just to summarize all the sub-area policies, as Irene did a great job on, if we were to come in with a rezoning, should this be approved, this can only be the one zoning district, which is planned non-residential development. We did prohibit the uses that were, in our opinion, the most impactful and I would say ugly uses, if you will. We did maintain the residential density as in Ag 5, what would be permitted in Ag 5, which is one home on a 5-acre lot, essentially. And really, that just came from the property owner's wish to potentially build a house on this property. Realistically, it won't happen, but he just wanted to maintain that entitlement. The open space, we need to present 25% of green on any site plan that comes in the future. So that does not include any lake area or stormwater retention area. Utilities, of course, were serviced by centralized potable water and sanitary sewer systems for future. And then transportation concurrency, any future traffic generated in excess of the established levels of service capacity shall be mitigated by the development through committed roadway construction payments or alternative conditions, which is assumed anyway. So if we can flip to the next slide, I think a very important piece to this is that there is an existing fiber optic hub on this property right now. It's located on Shin Road. And I didn't really know too much about a fiber optic hub until I joined in on this project. So if anyone does not know, fiber optic hub is a network node that connects multiple fiber optic lines. These hubs serve as data highways, enabling ultra-fast internet and communications. On top of that, this site has available capacity for 75,000 volts of electricity right today. So paired with the fiber optic hub and the 75,000 volts, it essentially acts as a digital superhighway. So what I'm getting to that is that would attract major players in the tech industry to build on this site. And we think that it really is a very suitable site for this land use, given the available capacity with that. We wouldn't want that to go to waste. So with that, I appreciate any feedback that you may have, even discussion on sub-area policies and crafting them. And I will turn it over to staff. Well, I guess Irene gave the presentation, but I'll turn it over to you, Chair.
Question, so like, in other words, you guys could call Elon and put a Grok AI center there with all that electricity and fiber optic?
I don't think
like
it would be able to handle an AI headquarters,
Okay.
but something like a internet provider, cellular provider certainly could.
But since there's the restriction of the quarter-mile distance, that couldn't happen right now anyways if it was rezoned, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to talk about that. Since there technically could, I mean, the fairgrounds are just south of our site, so I'm not necessarily arguing this point, but a public building or a jail, think about the impact of those two buildings compared to something like a tech or data center that only employees are arriving at. There's no guests really. So just comparing those impacts, I would think they're similar, but from a land use perspective, I completely understand that MXD has a more intense land use than a PI, or I forget the exact abbreviation for it.
Okay. Mr. Lowndes.
Ms. Settlemyer, can you go back to your report? Isn't there an abandoned road on this piece of property somewhere?
There is a canal Beg your pardon?
Talking Wolf Road?
Wolf Road,
So here, and I think right now that land is, it's owned both by, both parcels are owned by the North St. Lucie River Water Control District between those two parcels. I did not see public right-of-way. Let me double check.
It's basically a dirt road with a canal in the middle.
In that Commissioners is accurate. Simply for reference, we have the county's right-of-way protection map and thoroughfare protection plan. Given the location of Wolf and where it intersects on Midway adjacent to Okeechobee Road, our long-range plan would suggest that Range Line Road, as it progresses north, will jog it east, align it then with Shin, and emphasize intersections and connections at Shin. We're not anticipating that there would be a roadway north of Midway known as Wolf in that area. We're expecting it to be
Mr.
drained.
Benton, what happens to Wolf Road south of Midway?
We're expecting it to serve more local traffic, but not to be emphasized as an arterial. So here, as you can tell, the gray lines, local roads, moving folks about, but not a regional trip, a longer range.
I bet the
trip.
sheriff's department doesn't even know that road's there.
There's a chance that they know or don't know.
It
might be a more efficient backdoor access to the EOC or to
It's like a Grove. It's
Fairgrounds.
like a Grove Road more than anything,
Yeah.
man. That's all it is.
I don't want to see us end up like a De Leon situation in the future.
Understood.
Hey, Corey, has the city
Yeah.
PSL always been that far west up there on Midway? Or they,
The annexations, I believe, progressed several years ago up to that point.
so they annexed and blew out, and they're going to blow a bunch of residential and commercial up there, but
Well, and so the city limits, as we see today, it aligns with their utility service territory, which runs north and south essentially on an alignment of Range Line Road. And so that's why we've seen some of the annexations pushing out west. There's contiguity with, if you take Wilder, aka LTC Ranch, the commercial and residential side west of Glades, that's progressed out west.
is any of that updating Midway, that section of Midway Road? Because it sounds like from their letter that
So we have an intricate balance of different slated improvements along Midway Road, in that we have the unincorporated area on the north side further west. But when you are adjacent to the I-95 interchange, the city of Fort Pierce has annexed property on the north side. The two notable projects we've talked about before are Willow Lakes, which could contain that surf park and other mixed uses, as well as Sunrise Residential, which is a retool of the former villages at Midway, which emphasizes single-family and townhome residential development that's been progressing through the city actively. They're on the north side. Wilder development is on the south side. Both projects would have obligations as to improvements to Midway Road and/or a balance of proportionate fair share contributions. And so we're expecting additional lanes up to select western terminus points. Arterial A is one of those important segments. It starts on Glades Cutoff, adjacent to where Commerce Center Drive from the reserve connects to Glades. It picks up then on the north side of Glades, meanders through Wilder Parkway, probably known as Wilder Parkway, so through Wilder, and then connects at Midway Road. And so that's, Midway would be at least widened to that point through different phases of those projects. And then the question is, at what stage does the widening need to occur west of Arterial A or Wilder Parkway?
any other questions for staff or the applicant? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this is a public hearing. We'll open it up to the public at this time. If anybody from the public would like to address the board, come on down. Name and address for the record.
Thank you, Commissioners, very much. Mary Savage Dunham, representing the City of Port St. Lucie. And do you have a copy of the letter in front of you?
We all do.
Perfect, thank you. If I may, I'd like to just enter it into the record, and I appreciate your opportunity tonight. So we're here to provide comment on this proposal, the large-scale comprehensive plan amendment. We did just receive notice of this 2 days ago, so we haven't done a deep analysis of it. However, we do have some concerns. The traffic analysis asserts that the property will be able to accommodate quite an extensive amount of light industrial use and commercial use, but the traffic study that we received, we looked at it quickly, as well as your own traffic consultant, and there still seems to be open concerns about just how overburdened Midway Road is now with just the development that Mr. Benton said that Fort Pierce has approved. We have development that was previously entitled many years ago. Some of that's starting to bubble back up in what we call the Northwest Annexation Area, which is just south of Midway. And in fact, McCarty Ranch and Wilder. So we're really concerned about the capacity of Midway. And if the existing road is already overburdened and we don't have a surety of mitigation, the question is, should we find out what roadway improvements are needed before the project advances? We do know that the long-range transportation plan indicates improvements to 2-lane to 4-lane Midway Road. At this stage in the process, it's not clear that improvements beyond 4 lanes are not required. And FDOT has concerns. We in fact know that Midway Road from Wilder to 95 likely needs to be 8 lanes, and that interchange is going to need to be drastically improved just with what is currently entitled. Not anything new that might come on in the city, anything new that might come on in the county or Fort Pierce. So again, our concerns are about the adequacy of Midway Road. We're also very concerned about the county's reliance on proportionate fair share program to address the traffic impacts. Proportionate fair share payment doesn't add the capacity to the roadway, and it doesn't advance roadway projects. Required roadway improvements need to be identified in your CIP and then scheduled to coincide with the impacts of the development as they come online. Or as we all know, the residents say, you keep building, but the roads aren't here. Policy 8.1.1.3 of the county's intergovernmental coordination element states that the county will utilize the development review process to coordinate with local governments that are adjacent or will be impacted by the development. We do think Irene, she did notify us about this 2 days ago, so we want to thank county staff for collaborating as they always do. They provided copies of the staff report and traffic study, but we didn't receive any formal notice of the hearing or any request for intergovernmental coordination, and we only just recently received the information such that we weren't able to provide you like a really detailed analysis or more cohesive thoughts on this. So given the concerns that the city has with the application and the fact that mitigation to make sure that the roadway works for the project hasn't been clearly identified, we would request that the county postpone action on this until your traffic study is complete, your traffic reviewer identifies what might be needed to make sure that the roadway doesn't become overburdened and go to failure before this project moves forward. And with that, I thank you. I did bring copies of the letter, but since you have them, I'll just take them back with me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else from the public, we'll close public comment, come back to the board for discussion and or a motion.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Gettler?
Motion to take staff's recommendation for approval.
We have a second. Motion to approve by Mr. Gettler, second by Mr. Neese. Can we call the roll?
Commissioner Neese?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lowndes?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gettler?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair, Vice Chair Slay?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Benner?
Yes, ma'am.
Approved.
Motion carries. Okay, we're recommending board. It'll go to the commissioners. Do we have any workshops? Thank you.
Chair Benner, members of the commission, no immediately slated workshops at the moment. However, come August, we do have a featured event of evaluation and consideration of the county's comprehensive plan evaluation appraisal review. That's a process that we engage every 7 years, aligning with requirements of Florida statute to consider the data inventory and analysis that contribute to those goals, policies, and objectives within the comprehensive plan, making sure we continue to stay in alignment with the state's comprehensive planning goals, but also account for what's changing in our community. And Ben has a little bit more on it.
Good evening again, Chair Benner, Commissioners. We did want to mention, due to the number of items that did get continued from today's meeting to the August 21st meeting, there is consideration to hold a special Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on the Wednesday before the 21st. That would be August 20th, just to talk about the evaluation and appraisal review. That item only, because if we did have everything bunched up on that Thursday, we might be here for a lengthy period of time, so I wanted to throw that out there to the board. We're going to do a quorum call possibly tomorrow to see if the 20th would work, and we'll have a quorum for the evaluation and appraisal review discussion. But if that Wednesday did, for some reason, not work for you all, you could let me know now, but we're going to send an email out tomorrow.
If I don't die first.
Well, let's hope not.
All right. That works.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks again for all your dedication.
Mr. Chairman, one more question. How much more impact fees are we going to be looking at in the future?
So right now, we're only looking at our road impact fees. We're beginning the studies for our other impact fees. We're going to take the next year to do those studies.
Do we have a year or 2 years before they have to be approved?
We will be looking at approving those probably about the same time next year.
Okay.
So.
All right, so that's it. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, thank you guys.